Chapter 66. Ji Tianxing had returned alive, and had even successfully obtained the azure crystal. Ji Rufeng, Ji Changhe, and the others had been smug just now, saying that Ji Tianxing was dead for sure. Now, the two of them and the rest of the Ji family felt as if they had been slapped in public. They were so embarrassed that they almost vomited blood. However, Ji Tianxing had followed the family rules and successfully passed the test to obtain the azure crystal. This left Ji Rufeng, Ji Changhe, and the rest speechless. They had suffered a crushing defeat. No matter how unwilling they were, they had no choice but to accept this result and acknowledge Ji Tianxing as the family head. Ji Tianxing glanced at Ji Rufeng and the rest mockingly before leaving the main hall with a cold smile. He returned to the breezy courtyard and immediately entered the secret chamber to treat his injuries and restore his strength. In the celestial forest court, 3,000 meters away from the Ji mansion. It was still the same tall tower in the manor. At this moment, a young man and a young woman were standing at the top of the tower. The young man in a long silver robe was Bai Wuchen. The young woman in a plain white dress with long hair was Yun Yao. She stood proudly against the wind and looked into the distance. Her beautiful face revealed a look of astonishment. Just now, I sensed a trace of a dragon's aura? A dragon's aura appeared? She had always been cold and aloof. It was rare for her to be so surprised. Bai Wuchen frowned when he heard her murmuring. His expression was one of surprise. Dragon's aura? How could a dragon's aura appear in the imperial city of the Green Cloud Imperial City? Grand Senior Sister, could it be that you sensed wrongly? Yun Yao frowned. She was still focused on the dragon's aura, trying to find the source of the dragon's aura. Unfortunately, the dragon's aura only appeared for a moment before it disappeared immediately. When she heard Bai Wuchen's question, she shook her head gently and said firmly, "Junior brother Bai, don't forget that I have the celestial spirit's sacred constitution bloodline. I'm very sensitive to the aura of different races. I can't be wrong. Although the dragon's aura only appeared for a moment before it disappeared, I really sensed the dragon's aura." When she mentioned the bloodline of the celestial spirit's sacred constitution, Bai Wuchen stopped smiling and his face became serious. Since Grand Senior Sister's senses can't be wrong, then a dragon really did appear in the imperial city of the Green Cloud Imperial City. But that's impossible. How could a dragon's aura appear in the small imperial city of the Imperial City? Isn't the dragon clan residing in the endless Eastern Sea? How could they cross hundreds of millions of miles and come to the Imperial City? Bai Wuchen was still in disbelief. Yun Yao frowned and recalled for a moment. Then, she suddenly thought of something and her eyes flashed. Of the spiritual constitution constitution it's it the spiritual it. Bai Wuchen nodded and said, "The Yong'an region's Shenhui sect? I have also heard of this sect. It was once flourishing and controlled the entire Yong'an region. 100 years ago, after the Shenhui sect went through a disaster, its strength declined a lot. However, the Shenhui sect has recovered and is still one of the top 3 sects in the Yong'an region." "Yes, that's true." Yun Yao nodded slightly and continued, 100 years ago, when the Shenhui sect was in trouble, many masters and elders of the sect fled the sect. No one knows where they went. Along with those elders and experts, many rare spiritual beasts and a divine flood dragon also disappeared. It's said that there's a young elder in the divine Hui sect who's good at refining artifacts. It was this person who took the divine dragon with him when he escaped from the Shenhui sect. That person took the divine flood dragon and left the Shenhui sect, then disappeared. Later, the Shenhui sect sent people to search the entire Yong'an region, but they couldn't find it. People from the Shenhui sect even came to the Tianshan region to search for it for many years, but they couldn't find anything in the end. Bai Wuchen raised his eyebrows and his eyes sparkled. He asked tentatively, "Senior Sister, do you mean the dragon breath you sensed just now has something to do with that?" Yun Yao shook her head and said calmly, "I don't know if these two things are related. It's just that when I sensed the dragon breath just now, it reminded me of the past that Master told me. After a moment of silence, she said again, Junior brother Bai, our sex entrance competition is in 3 days. How's the preparation for it going? Bai Wuchen smiled and said, Senior sister, don't worry. The competition is ready. With junior brother Hao and the 3 deacons supervising it, there won't be any mistakes. But there's something I need you to make a decision on. Yun Yao looked straight ahead and asked calmly, What is it? Bai Wuchen explained, among the young disciples who passed the entrance test last month, there was a girl named Ling Yunfei. She was ranked 7th in terms of talent and strength. But she was killed a few days ago. Now there's a vacancy for the entrance competition. How will you deal with it, senior sister? Yun Yao looked in the direction of the Ji mansion. An imperceptible light flashed in her eyes. After a moment of silence, she said indifferently, Since there's a vacancy, we'll give those who didn't pass the entrance test a chance. Junior brother Bai, you'll be in charge of setting up an illusory weapon Xian formation in the city square and announce it to the whole city. If a young warrior can pass this formation in 3 days, he or she will get the vacancy and participate in the entrance competition in 3 days. Bai Wuchen was stunned. He didn't show it on his face, but he thought to himself, why is senior sister doing this? Could it be that she has other intentions? But he didn't ask. He just nodded with a smile and said, Okay, I'll do as senior sister says. Then, Bai Wuchen bid farewell to Yun Yao and left the top of the pagoda. Yun Yao was left standing alone at the top of the pagoda. Her eyes were deep in thought. Her figure was extremely slender under the light of the setting sun. Late at night, the Ji mansion was very quiet. Only a few courtyards were lit with lanterns. Ji Tianxing healed himself in the secret chamber for 6 hours. When he was fully recovered, he walked out of the secret chamber. He was about to call Huan and ask her to bring some food from the kitchen. At this moment, there was a slight sound of wind in the small courtyard outside the house. 9 black figures cut through the night like ghosts and landed lightly in the courtyard. These 9 figures were all dressed in black, with masks on their faces and swords on their backs. All of them had extraordinary strength. 8 of them stood in 2 rows in the courtyard. The leader walked to the door and reported in a low voice, Young master, Mu Shan requests to see you. Ji Tianxing had already sensed that someone had sneaked into the courtyard. He held the black dragon sword in his hand and was on guard. He thought that the other party was an assassin sent by second Uncle Ji Ruffing to assassinate him. After all, he had successfully passed through the forbidden area and obtained the blue crystal. He was now the rightful successor to the position of patriarch. Second Uncle Ji Ruffing had failed at the last step. It was very likely that he was planning to assassinate him. However, when Ji Tianxing heard the voice outside the door, he immediately let down his guard and a smile appeared on his face. He put away the black dragon sword and said in a low voice, Come in. The man in black named Mu Shan immediately opened the door and led the 8 men in black into the room. After entering the room, Mu Shan and the others walked to Ji Tianxing and knelt down on one knee. Mu Shan, the vice leader of the Shadow Sword Hall, greets the young master. Chapter 67. The 9 black-clothed men who entered the room were the masters of Shadow Sword Hall. The tall and burly man in the lead was called Mu Shan, the deputy hall master of Shadow Sword Hall. The 8 black-clothed men behind him were all sword envoys of Shadow Sword Hall. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a smile, Mu Shan, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Get up quickly. Mu Shan and the 8 sword envoys got up and stood respectfully. Mu Shan took 2 steps forward and came to Ji Tianxing's side. He lowered his voice and reported respectfully, Young master, I just came back from Yunzhou tonight and was about to report to you about the blood-clothed tower. I just learned about the shocking changes in the mansion. Congratulations to you for passing the test and succeeding the position of master. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and quickly asked, Have you found out about the blood-clothed tower? Mu Shan said in a deep voice with a murderous look, Young master, the blood-clothed tower has been removed from the world. The headquarters and 4 branches of the blood-clothed tower in Yunzhou were all destroyed by Shadow Sword Hall. There were 189 people in the blood-clothed tower, and 181 of them have been killed. Only 8 escaped and are still fleeing. Deputy Hall Masters Wa led 14 sword envoys to hunt down those who escaped in Yunzhou. I rushed back to the imperial city to report the news. After listening to Mu Shan's report, Ji Tianxing nodded with satisfaction and smiled with relief. Very good. You did a good job. Have you found out who hired the blood-clothed tower assassins to assassinate me? Mu Shan said in a deep voice, Young master, this matter has been investigated. The person who hired the assassins was Gu Hao's biological mother. We have assassinated her. In addition, we have found out that Gu Hao's biological mother was in Hanging Cloud City at that time. The person who tipped her off was Ji Hao's subordinate. Ji Tianxing had never doubted the ability of Shadow Sword Hall. After listening to Mu Shan's report, a cold light flashed in his eyes, and the corners of his mouth raised into a sneer. I didn't expect that the person who secretly tipped her off was Ji Hao. What a borrowed knife to kill. This cousin of mine is as ambitious as his father, despicable and sinister. Mu Shan did not comment on this matter. He was the vice hall master of the Shadow Sword Hall. He would only obey the orders of the clan head. After a moment of silence, he asked, Young master, the patriarch is currently in seclusion with serious injuries. On the outside, the Ling clan has been making frequent moves, constantly targeting the various properties of the Ji clan. On the inside, second elder and third elder are colluding, conspiring to seize power. Young master, now that you've succeeded as the patriarch, what plans and instructions do you have? Ji Tianxing frowned as he pondered, his eyes flashing with wisdom. A moment later, he said in a deep voice, Let's deal with the Ji clan's internal strife first. Ignore the Ling clan for now. Ling Sihai is seriously injured and will not dare to invade the Ji mansion in the near future. The Ling family could only do things that were not presentable and secretly retaliated against the Ji family's various businesses. This won't harm the Ji clan's foundation, so the various managers and district masters can still handle it. Mu Shan, put those managers with the surname Ji under house arrest and guard them strictly. Don't let them come in contact with anyone. Kill anyone who resists. In addition, you have to act in secret and do your best to find evidence of their crimes. I want to remove their authority and cut off second elder's wings first, then slowly deal with him. Go, carry it out immediately. After saying that, Ji Tianxing waved his hand. Mu Shan immediately bowed and accepted the order. Understood. Then, he led the 8 sword envoys out of the Cool Breeze courtyard and swiftly carried out the order. After Mu Shan and the others left, Ji Tianxing stood in the room for a moment with a thoughtful expression on his face. There are still 3 days before the Sky Pillar Sect's entrance competition begins. If I can't enter the Sky Pillar Sect to cultivate, I can only stay in the Imperial City and manage the family business, fighting with the various forces and being a landlord for the rest of my life. That's not what I want. Ji Tianxing muttered in a low voice. He secretly clenched his fists, his eyes flashing with a resolute light. Entering the Sky Pillar Sect to cultivate had always been his goal and dream. From a long time ago, he was tired of this kind of life. The Royal Azure Imperial City and the Royal Azure Empire were like a cage to him. He wanted to break out of this cage, spread his wings, and soar high. He wanted to cultivate more profound and powerful martial arts and explore the wonderful world outside. After a while, he turned around and entered the secret underground room. He began to cultivate and comprehend the Tao of the Sword Heart. He had already completely grasped the second stage of the Tao of the Sword Heart. He was very proficient in it and had reached the minor accomplishment stage. This stage of the cultivation technique could not only cultivate quintessential essence and increase the power of the sword embryo, but it could also control sword qi as if it was his own arm. Ji Tianxing named this stage of the cultivation technique sword driving art and had been diligently cultivating it for the past few days. In the dark secret room, he sat cross-legged in the middle of the quintessential gathering array and calmly pondered. Cultivation is like rowing a boat against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. I can't slack off for a moment. There are still 3 days. I must cultivate the sword-driving art to the greater accomplishment stage in order to unleash my strongest combat strength. Only then will I have the chance to participate in the grand entrance competition and obtain the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. After that, Ji Tianxing collected his thoughts and began to focus on cultivating the sword-driving art. At the same time, in the fourth courtyard of the Ji mansion, in the dark secret underground room, there was only a dim oil lamp that lit up with a dim yellow light. Ji Ruffing sat on the wooden armchair with a cold expression. His hands gripped the armrests so tightly that the veins on the back of his hands were popping out. Obviously, he was extremely angry. His heart was brewing with a monstrous rage. Ji Hao stood beside him. His expression was also very ugly. His eyes were surging with killing intent. After a moment of silence, he finally couldn't help but curse in a low voice. Damn Ji Tianxing! That bastard! How could he break through the forbidden area and obtain the azure crystal? I don't believe it. In the past month, he suddenly returned from the body refinement realm trash to the quintessential realm. Not only did he kill Ling Yunfei, but he also mastered that marvelous sword technique and even succeeded the position of the patriarch. Father, there must be a secret behind this. Ji Tianxing's change is too great. His growth is too fast. There must be a problem. Ji Hao's emotions were agitated. His heart was filled with anger and jealousy. Ji Ruffing frowned and said in a low and deep voice, "How? We all saw Ji Tianxing's change. It is indeed very strange, but there is no point in discussing this now." Just now, this subordinate came to report that Ji Tianxing sent people from the Shadow Sword Hall to put the managers under house arrest and strip them of their authority. He first dealt with those managers. Next, he will deal with me. Ji Hao's angry face twisted. His eyes surged with killing intent. Father, what do we do? Are we just going to sit here and wait for death? Ji Ruffing said expressionlessly, the people from the Shadow Sword Hall have returned. Even if we want to assassinate Ji Tianxing, it is impossible. For now, we can only wait and see. 3 days later, it will be the Sky Pillar sect's entrance competition. Ji Tianxing will definitely think of a way to participate. I have already informed the young prince of what happened today. Just now, the young prince sent me a secret letter and told us to wait patiently for 3 days. 3 days later, the young prince will help us deal with Ji Tianxing in the competition. At that time, Ji Tianxing will be dead. Ji Chongkong will not be a threat and the position of the family head will still be ours. Hearing this, Ji Hao's expression eased a little. However, he pondered for a moment and asked hesitantly, Father, are we really going to rely on the young prince and submit to him? The young prince's ambition is too great. If it is exposed in the future, I'm afraid the entire Ji family will be implicated and executed by the imperial family. Ji Ruffing frowned. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, those who achieve great things must have the courage to cut off all means of retreat. The young prince has the world in his heart and has great ambitions. What is a mere Qingyun kingdom? In the future, the entire 10 countries of the Tianshan region will be in his pocket. If we surrender early, we can still be relied on by him and receive more rewards in the future. Chapter 68. The night passed by quickly. Early the next morning, when Ji Tianxing finished his cultivation had increased a little, and his strength had improved. When he returned to his room, Huan quickly brought him a basin of water and a box of food. She helped him wash up and eat breakfast. While he was eating breakfast, Huan reported a piece of news. Eldest young master, I heard someone in the mansion mention something this morning. Someone from the Sky Pillar sect set up a large formation in the city square and announced that there is a vacancy in the quota for the entrance competition. As long as the young talents of the Imperial City can pass through the formation, they will be qualified to participate in the entrance competition in 2 days. Eldest young master, this is an excellent opportunity for you. Do you want to give it a try? Ji Tianxing was startled. He thought to himself, a vacancy? Is it because Ling Yunfei died? He nodded and smiled. How can I miss such a good opportunity? After breakfast, he left the Ji mansion and took a carriage to the city square. By the time he arrived at the city square, it was already late in the morning. The large square was already packed with people. There were thousands of Imperial City citizens and young martial artists. The square was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Ji Tianxing got off the carriage and walked through the crowd with an expressionless face to the center of the square. There was a high platform with a radius of 100 meters. It was surrounded by a white jade fence with many spirit beast statues. Usually, when there was a grand ceremony in the Imperial City, it would be held on the high platform. At this moment, there was only a huge dark golden ball of light on the high platform. The ball of light was as big as a courtyard. It was condensed from the energy of the formation. Its surface was shining with a dazzling golden light. Obviously, this was the formation set up by the Sky Pillar sect. The high platform was surrounded by people. Everyone stared at the golden ball of light and whispered to each other. The Sky Pillar sect's disciples are really extraordinary. This is the illusory weapon formation? It is said to be a low-grade profound level formation. A profound grade array can only be set up by a profound grade expert. Normal true energy realm martial artists would have a hard time breaking through it. Those in the body refinement realm definitely have no hope. To be able to break through the array and obtain a spot, one must at least have the strength of the true element boundary. Sigh. It's a pity that we can't see what's going on inside the formation from the outside. I wonder what's so special about this illusory weapon Xian formation? Ji Tianxing passed through the crowd and arrived at the bottom of the high platform. He silently sized up the illusory weapon Xian formation and listened to the discussions of the surrounding warriors. At this moment, the dark golden ball of light on the high platform suddenly flashed with two golden lights. Shua! A figure flew out of the ball of light and was bounced 10 meters away by the majestic force of the array. He rolled and fell off the high platform. This person was a young martial artist. He was dressed luxuriously and had an extraordinary bearing. However, he was injured in the illusory weapon mystic formation. His clothes were tattered, revealing more than a dozen bloody wounds. His disheveled appearance was very embarrassing. Seeing this person fall off the stage in a sorry state, the surrounding cultivators suddenly let out a burst of exclamations, discussions, and laughter. Isn't that Chu Xingzi? He has the strength of the second level of the true element boundary. How did he fail? Brother, you didn't see it just now, right? Chu Xingzi had just entered the illusory weapon mystic formation for less than half an hour and failed to break through the array and was ejected out. Hee. What's so strange about Chu Xingzi failing to break through the array? You guys came late and didn't see it. Before Chu Xingzi, there were more than a dozen people who were ejected out with bruises all over their bodies. Sigh. It seems like it's very difficult to obtain that vacant spot. Even the strength of the second level of the true element boundary can't do it. I reckon that the person who can break through the array not only has the strength of the third level of the true element boundary, but also has to be proficient in arrays. Hearing until here, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but frown. He secretly looked around and indeed saw a few young martial artists who were injured. They were covered in blood and were in a sorry state. After the dark golden ball ejected Chu Xingzi, a black door appeared. It was obviously the entrance to the array. However, most of the onlookers were just watching the show and didn't dare to try to break through the array. At this moment, a burly young man in black clothes leaped onto the high platform and walked towards the black door. The crowd around the high platform immediately burst into discussions. Look, there's another person who overestimates himself trying to break through the array. I know that person. He's Lu family's Lu Suidao. He reached the third level of the true element boundary not long ago. I heard that he was cultivating in seclusion previously and missed the Sky Pillar sect's entrance test. He has always regretted it, so he vowed to obtain that vacant spot this time. Lu Suidao went in. I wonder if he can break through. Ji Tianxing listened to the discussions around him and stared at Lu Suidao with interest as he watched him enter the illusory weapon mystic formation. After Lu Suidao entered the array, the black door disappeared. The dark golden ball was very quiet and didn't emit any sound. The crowd couldn't see the situation inside the array. About 7 minutes later, the dark golden ball suddenly flickered with 2 rays of golden light. Swish! Lu Suidao was ejected and fell off the high platform with blood all over his body. He lay on the ground in a sorry state. There was another burst of discussion in the crowd. Many people felt that it was a pity. After Lu Suidao struggled to get up and limped away, no one dared to go on the stage for a long time. After a full 15 minutes, a young martial artist in a white robe with an imposing appearance jumped onto the high platform. Seeing the white-robed young man on the stage, the onlookers all revealed surprised expressions and started to discuss again. Everyone look, it's Zhang Baiyu. Zhang Baiyu actually wants to break through the array? He has the strength of the 5th level of the true element boundary and is ranked in the top 10 in the nation. No. Zhang Baiyu has already passed the entrance test and obtained the spot to participate in the tournament. Why does he still want to break through the array? You don't understand, right? Zhang Baiyu is breaking through the array to gain fame. If he successfully breaks through the array, he will definitely impress the Sky Pillar sect. When he enters the Sky Pillar sect in the future, he will definitely receive preferential treatment and be heavily nurtured by the sect. I see. This Zhang Baiyu is quite ambitious. Ji Tianxing's expression was calm as he watched Zhang Baiyu enter the array. A playful smile appeared on his face. He had seen the black and white heroes at the Dragon Gates banquet and had some impression of Zhang Baiyu. He wanted to see if the conceited Zhang Baiyu could get what he wanted. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The dark golden light ball suddenly flickered with 2 rays of golden light, and a white figure was ejected out. It was Zhang Baiyu. His white robe was stained with blood, and his hair was disheveled as he fell off the stage. He rolled a few times before coming to a stop. He had confidently stepped onto the stage to break through the array under everyone's gazes, but he didn't expect to end up in such a sorry state. Zhang Baiyu was so ashamed that he wanted to die. He crawled up with a dirty face and hurriedly left the square through the crowd. When the martial artists around the high platform saw that even Zhang Baiyu couldn't break through the array, they instantly burst into an uproar and burst into discussions. Oh my God! Isn't this illusory weapon mystic formation too powerful? Even Zhang Baiyu can't break through it? If even the top 10 geniuses can't break through it, then who can get the empty spot? Ha! Whoever can break through the array is definitely a genius more powerful than Zhang Baiyu. This kind of genius would have already passed the entrance test. Why would he need to break through the array? Chapter 69. At the edge of the square in the city, there was a 30-meter tall pagoda. 2 young men were standing on top of the pagoda, looking down at the crowd and the high platform in the square. The white-robed young man was Bai Wuchen, and the burly young man beside him was Hao Meng. They looked at the illusory weapon Shen formation on the high platform and heard the noise from the square. They couldn't help but smile. Bai Wuchen had a playful smile on his face and said indifferently, "Some frogs at the bottom of the well are too self-righteous. They think that they can impress us by passing the illusory weapon Shen formation and get the focus of the sect's training. How ridiculous!" Hao Meng grinned and said with a smile, "Yes, the illusory weapon Shen formation is just a low-grade Shen formation. Although it's a little difficult, it's not a big deal. Even if that person passes the formation, he won't be valued by the sect." Bai Wuchen's smile deepened, and he said contemptuously, "What's more ridiculous is that the self-righteous frogs at the bottom of the well failed the formation. How ridiculous!" Hao Meng said, "Senior brother Bai, it's reasonable for that person to fail the formation. Although the illusory weapon Shen formation is a low-grade Shen formation, only those in the mystic comprehending realm can break through it. Ordinary true energy realm people can't break through it. They can only think of other ways to break the formation." Bai Wuchen stopped sneering and murmured with a deep look in his eyes, "I don't know why senior sister used this formation to test them. Does she have other intentions?" Hao Meng hesitated and said with a grin, "Senior brother Bai, I think you're thinking too much. It's completely reasonable for senior sister to ask you to set up this formation. Our sky-bearing sect is the #1 sect in the Tianshan region. How can any mediocre person enter? That place is temporarily vacant. If anyone wants to get it, they have to pay a higher price." Hao Meng was explaining when he suddenly saw a young man in a black robe walking out of the crowd in the square and stepping onto the high platform. He stared at the young man in the black robe and frowned. He said subconsciously, "Hey, isn't that the kid with the surname Ji? So many people have failed to break through the array before, and he still dares to step onto the stage?" Bai Wuchen stared coldly at Ji Tianxing's silhouette. His lips curled into a mocking smile. He, eldest senior sister, was merciful and helped that brat twice. Could it be that he still thinks that eldest senior sister will remember an aunt like him and help him again? That illusory weapon profound formation was personally arranged by me. I don't believe that you can break through it. Hao Meng tilted his head and glanced at Bai Wuchen. He had a feeling that senior brother Bai was hostile towards that young man with the surname Ji. He wanted to remind Bai Wuchen, but after a moment of hesitation, he dismissed the idea. Ji Tianxing walked out of the crowd expressionlessly and climbed up the stairs to the stage. When the martial artists around the high platform saw him, they immediately showed expressions of surprise, contempt, and disdain. Many people rejoiced in the misfortune of others. They began to discuss eccentrically and even burst into laughter. "Oh, isn't this the young master of the Ji family? He's here to break through the array too?" Last month, the useless Ji family failed the entrance test. Looks like he's not satisfied and wants to fight for the vacant spot. Tsk, even a genius like Jiang Baiyu failed. A useless body refinement realm cultivator wants to break through the array? He must be dreaming. Is he out of his mind? Doesn't Ji Tianxing think that he hasn't embarrassed himself enough? Previously, he was humiliated in the entrance test and became known as a useless person. Now, he's here to embarrass himself again. This is going to be a good show. Let's see how pathetic and miserable his injuries are later. I bet that Ji Tianxing will be ejected from the array in less than 10 breaths of time. Only a few people knew that Ji Tianxing had recovered his true energy realm strength. Most of the people present still thought that he was a useless body refinement realm cultivator from last month. Therefore, everyone was rejoicing in his misfortune and talking about him without restraint, mocking him for overestimating himself. Ji Tianxing ignored everyone's discussion and ridicule. He stepped through the black door expressionlessly and entered the illusory weapon mystic array. Swoosh! A golden light flashed. Ji Tianxing entered the array and seemed to have arrived at a dark space. This space was like a spacious hall, surrounded by dark golden walls of light. The squarish black stone floor was at least 100 meters long and wide. The floor was paved with thousands of stone slabs. They were arranged horizontally and vertically, like a huge chessboard. On this huge chessboard, there were 16 chess pieces moving back and forth. Those chess pieces were humanoid puppets made of bronze. All of them were wearing armor and holding swords and weapons. They looked lifelike. The 16 bronze puppets were 2 meters tall. They were strong and sturdy, like brave warriors on the battlefield. They were emitting a cold, murderous aura. The weapons in their hands were different. There was a palm-sized black heavy sword, a fierce and domineering zamadeo, a 9-section whip full of barbs, a long spear, a heavy halberd, and a meteor hammer. Just by looking at their appearance, people could feel the iron-blooded murderous aura. They were shrouded in invisible pressure. Ji Tianxing had no doubt that those bronze puppets were not only powerful and destructive, but also invulnerable. Fortunately, those bronze puppets only moved back and forth in the chessboard and did not attack him. Ji Tianxing was not in a hurry to break through the array. He looked at the bronze puppets and observed the dark golden light walls around him, looking for the exit of the array. Generally speaking, this kind of array used as an assessment would leave an exit. The challenger only needed to pass the test and break through the blockade of the 16 puppets to reach the exit and successfully break through this array. However, even after Ji Tianxing looked around, he still could not find the exit of the formation. The surroundings were blocked by the dark golden light walls, and there was not even a crack. This illusory weapon Shen formation has no exit. Do I have to break the array to get out? Ji Tianxing thought for a while, then he stepped into the blacked chessboard and walked forward. The 2 bronze puppets closest to him kept moving back and forth on his left and right. When he was 5 meters away from the 2 puppets, they immediately sped up and rushed toward him, waving the long spear and the zamadeo to attack him. Swish! Swish. The long spear and the fierce Zamedeo slashed toward him at an extremely fast speed, making an air-piercing sound. Ji Tianxing wanted to rush over with the fastest speed and not fight with the two puppets. But he did not expect that the two puppets were so fast that they rushed to him in an instant. The long spear and the Zamedeo attacked him at the same time, making it difficult for him to resist, and there was nowhere to hide. Bang! He tried his best to avoid the Zamedeo, but his abdomen was swept by the long spear, and he was knocked back on the spot. He fell to the ground 5 meters away, making a muffled plop sound. At this time, the two bronze puppets stopped attacking and did not chase him. The two puppets looked at each other, then turned back and continued to walk back and forth in the chessboard. Ji Tianxing covered his abdomen and got up. He endured the piercing pain and carefully observed the bronze puppets. The test just now made him understand one thing. If he wanted to break through this illusory weapon Shen formation, he must find a way to break through it. No matter how strong a warrior of the true element realm was, he could never be a match for the bronze puppets. Chapter 70. Ji Tianxing had dabbled in formations since he was young, so he was not unfamiliar with them. The Ji family was a family of blacksmiths, so they would use formations in the weapons and equipment they forged. When Ji Tianxing broke into the family's forbidden area, he had seen the formations set up by the Ji family's ancestor with his own eyes. Thus, he had some experience in setting up formations and breaking them. He stood at the edge of the formation and calmly observed the ground and the 16 bronze puppets, looking for a way to break the formation. The ground was paved with thousands of black stone slabs. It was flat and neat, and he could not see any abnormalities. He could not see any clues from this chessboard-like ground for the time being, so he focused all his attention on the bronze puppets. He carefully observed for a while and found some patterns. The 16 bronze puppets had similar appearances, but the weapons in their hands were different. Moreover, their attack range was 5 meters. As long as he stepped into this range, he would be attacked. They walked back and forth on the chessboard. Although it looked disorderly, there was actually some kind of pattern hidden within. Most importantly, Ji Tianxing found that there was a bronze heart-protecting mirror on the chest of each bronze puppet. There was a word engraved on each heart-protecting mirror. Some were engraved with gold, some with wood, and some with water, fire, and earth. Other than the words metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, there were also a few puppets with heaven, earth, and man engraved on their heart-protecting mirrors. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and pondered seriously. He vaguely felt that the words on the heart-protecting mirrors might be the key to breaking the formation. Heaven, earth, man, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. A total of 8 words. There are 16 bronze puppets here, and every 2 puppets have the same word. Could there be a mystery behind this? Thus, Ji Tianxing focused on observing the paths of the bronze puppets. Not long after, he found an interesting phenomenon. A bronze puppet with the word gold on its chest was aimlessly walking on the chessboard. A puppet with the words heaven on its chest was walking towards it. It brushed past the puppet with the word gold and continued walking. However, when that gold puppet encountered another gold puppet, the two of them actually turned around and walked away at the same time. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but frown and ponder silently. Gold and heaven have nothing to do with each other, so when these 2 puppets brushed past each other, there was no reaction at all. However, 2 golden character puppets would not meet each other. Instead, they would turn around and leave after meeting each other. Could it be that puppets with the same name cannot stay together? With this thought in mind, he stared at the puppets and continued to observe. It wasn't long before that heaven puppet encountered another heaven puppet. In the end, just as Ji Tianxing had guessed, the 2 heaven puppets immediately turned around and walked back when they were about to meet. This discovery shook his spirits, and he revealed a playful smile. So that's how it is. There is indeed a pattern. I just don't know what will happen if 2 puppets with the same name meet. Ji Tianxing was somewhat eager to give it a try. He stepped into the formation again and rushed forward. At this moment, the bronze puppet on the left was walking towards the center, and the distance between them was rapidly closing. On the breastplate of this bronze puppet, there was the word water. When Ji Tianxing had rushed 8 meters away, he was just 5 meters away from it. That bronze puppet immediately sped up and rushed over, brandishing its spear and thrusting it towards Ji Tianxing. Swish! The thrusting spear was extremely powerful, and its speed was unbelievably fast. It actually produced a sharp sound as it pierced through the air. Ji Tianxing didn't bother with it at all, and continued to rush forward without stopping at all. That water's puppet immediately chased after him. Its pair of bronze feet stepped on the stone floor, producing muffled ping-ping-ping sounds. Although Ji Tianxing was running away with all his might, avoiding the pursuit of the water puppet, his eyes were fixed on the other hand. However, his eyes were fixed on another puppet not far away. There was also the word water on that puppet's heart-protecting mirror. He just wanted to take a risk and see what would happen if the two puppets with the same word bumped into each other. Seeing that the water puppet behind him was about to catch up to him, it brandished its spear and thrusted it towards him again. At this critical juncture, he burst forth with all his strength to escape, and rushed straight towards the water puppet in front of him. When he was only 5 meters away from that water puppet, that puppet also sped up and rushed over, brandishing its huge meteor hammer to launch an attack. Ji Tianxing was pincered by the tuned water puppets, and immediately fell into a dangerous situation. The slightest carelessness would cause him to be seriously injured. However, the two puppets were still 10 meters away from each other, and he still couldn't dodge. His expression became grave, and he instantly made up his mind. Sword driving technique. He activated 4 flashes of sword chi, and formed a sword art with both hands to control the sword chi. He condensed a sword net of flowing light to protect himself. Thump, thump, thump. Amidst the heavy footsteps, the tuned water puppets fiercely rushed over, raising their spears and meteor hammers high up, and smashing them down towards him. At this moment, the tuned water puppets were still 6 meters away from each other. The spears and meteor hammers smashed down at the same time, and fiercely hit the flowing light sword net. Ding ding ding! A series of crisp sounds of metal clashing burst out. The flowing light sword net was smashed into pieces, and the sword chi burst out in all directions. Ji Tianxing saw that the two puppets were only 4 meters away from each other, and a bright light flashed in his eyes. Now! He shouted in his heart, and immediately jumped 3 meters away, dodging the spears and meteor hammers by a hair's breadth. Bang! The tuned water puppets were charging at such a fast speed that they couldn't stop. They immediately collided with each other, and a muffled sound burst out. Then a surprising scene appeared. After the tuned water puppets collided, they weren't repelled by the rebounding force, but actually disappeared at the same time. Ji Tianxing fell on the ground 3 meters away, and stared at this unbelievable scene with his eyes wide open. Instantly, a smile appeared on his face. After the tuned water puppets with the same name collided, they actually disappeared at the same time. I see. This is the way to break the illusory weapon Shen formation. He was excited and said to himself with a heart full of excitement. At the same time, another tuned bronze puppets approached him, and broke through the 5-meter attack range. Those tuned bronze puppets suddenly sped up, and waved their heavy sword and halberd to attack Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing had found the way to break the formation, so of course he wasn't afraid of the siege of those two puppets. He saw that the fire and earth characters were engraved on the heart protection mirrors of those two puppets. Thus, he found another puppet with the word earth on it and rushed over as fast as he could. After a short while, the two puppets caught up with him and launched an extremely violent attack. The other earth puppet was also alarmed and quickly rushed over. Ji Tianxing was trapped in the siege of 3 puppets, but he didn't panic. He repeated the same trick and skillfully closed the distance between the 2 earth puppets. Then, with a muffled sound, the 2 earth puppets collided with each other and disappeared on the spot. Another 5 chapters. Please bookmark, recommend tickets, and reward. Chapter 71. Ji Tianxing had mastered the method of breaking the formation, so he confidently shuttled back and forth in the formation. He was chased by several bronze puppets, and under the perilous situation, he was almost heavily injured several times. But he kept adjusting the direction of his escape, deliberately making the puppets with the same characters charge at him head-on. Moreover, he could always avoid the fatal attack at the most critical moment and make two puppets with the same characters collide with each other and then disappear at the same time. Two puppets with the character of water disappeared, and so did two puppets with the character of earth. Then, two puppets with the character of fire disappeared. As time went by, pairs of puppets disappeared one after another, and there were fewer and fewer bronze puppets in the formation. After about a quarter of an hour, there was only one pair of puppets left in the illusory weapon formation. Ji Tianxing ran on the chessboard with all his strength, constantly adjusting the direction of his escape, making the two bronze puppets attack him from the front and back. When the two bronze puppets rushed at him one after another, he finally showed a smile on his face. When he was about to be hit by the two puppets, he jumped up more than 3 meters high in a flash. Before the two bronze puppets could react, they collided head-on with each other. Swish! The last two bronze puppets disappeared at the same time. At the same time, the black stone ground under Ji Tianxing's feet disappeared and turned into white jade stone. The dark golden light wall around him also disappeared, revealing the blue sky, the golden sunlight, and the crowd around the high platform. Swish! The whole illusory weapon formation disappeared. Ji Tianxing stood on the high platform with a calm face, and his figure was proud. Originally, the high platform was bustling with noise and excitement. Everyone was talking about Ji Tianxing breaking into the formation. Almost everyone was taking pleasure in his misfortune and laughing at him. Most people believed that Ji Tianxing, a trash in the body refining realm, could never break through the illusory weapon formation. But when everyone was talking, the illusory weapon formation suddenly disappeared, and Ji Tianxing appeared in front of everyone intact. At that moment, the crowd around the high platform suddenly became silent. Everyone was stunned, revealing an inconceivable expression, and staring at Ji Tianxing with their eyes wide open. Before this, everyone had made all sorts of guesses. They guessed that Ji Tianxing would be ejected from the array and be severely injured. His body would be covered in blood, and he might even lose his life. However, what no one expected was that Ji Tianxing appeared unscathed, but the illusory weapon Xian formation disappeared. Tens of thousands of warriors looked as if they had seen a ghost. Their bodies stiffened as if they had been petrified. After everyone came back to their senses, they burst into earth-shattering discussions and cries of shock. Oh my God! Am I seeing things? The illusory weapon profound formation disappeared? Could it have been cracked? Even the genius Jiang Baiyu couldn't break through the mystic grade great array, but it was actually broken by Ji Tianxing? How is this possible? Isn't he a trash in the body refinement realm? How is it possible to break this formation? There must be something wrong. I don't believe this is true. Unbelievable. Could it be that Ji Tianxing has recovered his strength? In the crowded square, similar cries of surprise could be heard everywhere. Those who witnessed this scene couldn't believe this result. 1 month ago, in the same square in the city, on this high platform, Ji Tianxing accepted the strength test while he was unconscious. At that time, he was only at the 3rd level of the body refinement realm. He became the laughingstock of the world and was labeled as trash. This matter spread throughout the royal Azure Kingdom overnight. Today, 1 month later, on this high platform, Ji Tianxing had cracked the great array that even Jiang Baiyu couldn't break through in front of everyone. Many people present had witnessed what happened 1 month ago. They had seen Ji Tianxing become a trash with their own eyes. Because of this, they couldn't accept this result. They couldn't believe that Ji Tianxing had recovered his strength and returned to the peak in just 1 month. Ji Tianxing stood on the high platform and looked down at the crowd. Looking at the shocked and incredulous faces, the corners of his mouth curled into a disdainful sneer. His heart was also surging with emotions, excitement, and excitement. I, Ji Tianxing, am back. He roared in his heart, full of confidence and lofty sentiments. At this moment, he only felt that the humiliation and criticism that he had endured for the past month had all disappeared. The title of trash was washed away by him in front of nearly 10,000 people. However, this is just the beginning. In the entrance competition 2 days later, I will make everyone's eyeballs fall out. Ji Tianxing thought in his heart as a sneer flashed across his eyes. At this moment, a middle-aged man in a green robe walked up to the high platform and came to his side. This person was at the mystic comprehending realm and had a dignified aura. He was the deacon of the Sky Pillar sect. He looked at Ji Tianxing and said in a serious tone, "Ji Tianxing, you have successfully cracked the illusory weapon mystic formation and obtained the vacant quotas. Remember to come here to participate in the entrance competition 2 days later." Ji Tianxing immediately cupped his fists and bowed to the middle-aged deacon. "Understood. Thank you, deacon." The middle-aged deacon nodded and turned to walk down the high platform. Ji Tianxing also walked down the high platform, passed through the crowd in the square, and returned to the Ji mansion in a carriage. The 10,000 people in the square had yet to disperse. They discussed for a long time in groups of 3 to 5 before their excited mood slowly calmed down. Immediately after, the news of Ji Tianxing successfully cracking the illusory weapon mystic formation and obtaining the qualification for the entrance competition spread like the wind. In just half a day, this news spread throughout the imperial city of Green Cloud. All the martial artists in the city finally understood that Ji Tianxing was no longer the trash that was ridiculed by everyone. He actually recovered his strength in just a month and even surpassed the genius Jiang Baiyu. Of course, after this news spread, the most depressed person was Jiang Baiyu. Back then, Ji Tianxing was the #1 genius in the imperial city. He was suppressed by Ji Tianxing's fame and could not stand out. Today, he failed to break through the illusory weapon mystic formation, but Ji Tianxing successfully cracked the formation. When people spread the news, they would compare him with Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing stepped on him again and cleared his name of trash. Jiang Baiyu was used as a stepping stone by him and was secretly ridiculed by countless martial artists. How could he not be angry from embarrassment? In the Spirit Fire Palace, in a certain luxurious room, young Prince Ji Ling was wearing a white long robe and was sitting cross-legged on the bed with his eyes closed. Suddenly, an old man in black clothes quickly walked into the room and reported with cupped fists. Reporting to young Prince, "I just received news that Ji Tianxing cracked the illusory weapon mystic formation in front of everyone in the city square and obtained the qualification to participate in the entrance competition." Ji Ling slowly opened his eyes and listened to the old man in black's report. He couldn't help but curl his lips and a cold, killing intent flashed across his eyes. "I already knew that he recovered his strength and is not weaker than the 5th level of the true element realm. He cracked the formation in front of everyone and obtained the qualification to participate in the entrance competition. This is exactly what I wanted. Otherwise, if he didn't participate in the entrance competition, I would have to find another opportunity to make a move on him." After a pause, he sneered and said, "I have already completely refined the God-seizing pearl, and my strength has also reached the peak. In the entrance competition 2 days later, I will take Ji Tianxing's dog life. 5 updates a day. I only ask for your support and recommendation tickets." Little he thanks everyone. Chapter 72. After returning to the Ji mansion, Ji Tianxing made a trip to his father's residence. His father was still recuperating in the secret chamber. Although his injuries were getting better, the recovery was very slow. He didn't wake up his father who was recuperating. Instead, he gave a few instructions to the guards guarding the secret chamber and left. After returning to Qingfeng Courtyard, he entered the secret chamber and prepared to continue cultivating. There were still 2 days before the tournament. He wanted to use these last 2 days to increase his strength by a few %. The elixirs stored in the secret chamber, as well as the elixirs given to him by little Princess Ku, were all consumed and refined by him. For 2 whole days, he stayed in the secret chamber and cultivated bitterly. He only came out once. This time, he only appeared for an hour. During this time, he ate some food to replenish his strength. He also asked Mushan for some information and made some arrangements. In these 2 days, the Ji mansion was peaceful. Second Elder Ji Ruffing was surprisingly calm. He didn't make any movements as if he didn't feel any danger. The few managers who were under house arrest were also calm. They ate, drank, and slept leisurely as if nothing had happened. Even Ji Hao stayed in his room and cultivated. He didn't show his face. But in reality, they were all waiting for the Sky Pillar Sex tournament to begin. Because they all knew that the day the tournament began would be the day Ji Tianxing died. The imperial city of Green Cloud was the complete opposite of the Ji Mansion's tranquility. These 2 days, it was very lively and noisy. On one hand, the Sky Pillar Sex tournament was about to begin. The grand event that happened once every 3 years was about to begin. It attracted countless cultivators to come to the imperial city to watch. On the other hand, the news of Ji Tianxing recovering his strength and participating in the tournament caused a lot of discussion among the commoners in the imperial city. Countless people were waiting for the tournament to begin. They wanted to see Ji Tianxing's performance in the tournament with their own eyes. Everyone wanted to see if the trash from back then had really recovered his strength. Could he wash away the shame in the tournament, clear his name, and obtain the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect? Everyone was looking forward to it. 2 days had passed. On the morning of the 3rd day, Ji Tianxing finally ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. At this time, his appearance didn't change, but his strength had increased by 40%. His entire body faintly emitted a powerful aura, and his eyes revealed a strong sense of confidence and anticipation. Under Huan Er's service, he changed into a set of black clothes with silver line patterns. His entire person became heroic and exuberant. He held the black dragon sword wrapped in the black iron scabbard and calmly walked out of the Ji mansion. He rode a carriage to the city square. At this time, the sun had just risen, and the warm morning breeze was blowing, making people feel comfortable. Countless commoners of the imperial city flocked to the city square, wanting to catch a glimpse of the Sky Pillar sect's disciples and the heroic bearing of the top 10 geniuses of the Royal Azure Kingdom. After passing through several crowded streets, the carriage stopped at the edge of the square. The square, with a radius of nearly 3,000 meters, was already packed with people. Most of them were commoners and martial warriors from the imperial city. Ji Tianxing raised his head and looked around. There were people everywhere. Roughly estimating that there were at least 30 to 50,000 people gathered in the square. Today, the number of people who came to the square to watch the grand competition was several times more than when he broke the array. Ji Tianxing passed through the crowd and walked towards the high platform in the middle of the square. Today's grand competition would be presided over by 2 deacons of the Sky Pillar sect. 3 Sky Pillar sect disciples would also be present to supervise. The grand competition's arena was the white jade high platform in the middle of the square. When Ji Tianxing squeezed out of the crowd and arrived below the high platform, he saw that there were more than 20 young martial warriors standing around the high platform. These 20-over people were all young martial warriors who had passed the test and would be participating in the grand competition today. Most of them were famous geniuses in the Royal Azure Kingdom. They each stood around the high platform, leaving an empty space of 10 feet around them. No one dared to get close to them. Ji Tianxing also stood on the stone steps below the high platform, waiting with a calm expression. Some of the commoners and warriors who were watching immediately recognized him and started whispering to each other with strange expressions on their faces. In the blink of an eye, the crowd around him also retreated, leaving an empty space. Apart from the crowd's whispers, the 20-over young martial warriors also looked at Ji Tianxing with complicated gazes. Some of them were sizing him up, some of them were vigilant and alert, and some of them were indifferent. Among them, there was one gaze that was the most dazzling. It contained dense hostility and killing intent, making Ji Tianxing feel as if there was a thorn in his back. He followed that gaze and saw Jiang Baiyu, who was dressed in a white robe, staring at him with a gloomy expression. He was probably ridiculed by the entire city for the past 2 days, so he's bearing a grudge against me. Ji Tianxing sneered in his heart and retracted his gaze. He couldn't be bothered with Jiang Baiyu. After a while, more and more people gathered in the square. The young martial warriors participating in the grand competition were almost all here. Little Princess Cuckoo was also one of the geniuses who had passed the test and was going to participate in the grand competition. Under the protection of the palace guards, she passed through the crowd and arrived below the high platform. She looked around and hurried over when she saw Ji Tianxing. The little princess came to Ji Tianxing's side and whispered angrily, "Big brother Tianxing, you despicable guy. After saying that, she pouted angrily and glared at Ji Tianxing with her big eyes, showing that she was very dissatisfied. Ji Tianxing's expression was a little awkward. He smiled embarrassedly and asked, "Cuckoo, what's wrong? Are you unhappy?" "Of course I'm unhappy." The little princess glared at him angrily again and muttered angrily, "Some big liar secretly recovered his strength, but he refused to tell this princess. He made this princess worry about him all day, racking my brains to think of a solution for him. Despicable." Ji Tianxing immediately revealed an apologetic smile. He looked at her sincerely and said, "Cuckoo, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hide this from you. I have my own difficulties. You should also know that a lot of unforeseen events have happened in the Ji family during this time." Before he finished speaking, the anger on the little princess's face completely dissipated. Her big clear eyes stared at Ji Tianxing. Seeing his guilty and sincere expression, she revealed a flower-like smile. She nodded repeatedly and said, Okay, big brother Tianxing, you don't need to explain. I understand. I know you were forced to hide the news, but you still treat me as a friend, right?" Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded, "Of course. Cuckoo, you're my best friend." "I knew big brother Tianxing was the best to me." The little princess revealed a sweet smile, looking even more charming and cute. She clenched her white and tender little fist and said to Ji Tianxing, "Big brother Tianxing, today we have to kill our way into the top 10 and win the qualifications to enter the Sky-Bearing sect. When the time comes, the two of us will enter the Sky-Bearing sect at the same time. We can accompany each other day and night, cultivate martial arts together, and take care of each other." As she spoke, the little princess's big clear eyes revealed a look of strong expectation. Chapter 73. Not long after, young Prince Jiling arrived below the high platform. The 40 young cultivators participating in the tournament were all present. 2 middle-aged men in green robes walked up the high platform. These 2 men had an extraordinary aura and a noble status. They were the Sky Pillar sect's 2 deacons in green robes who were in charge of presiding over today's tournament. After ascending the stage, the tall and burly middle-aged deacon spoke first. "Everyone, I am the Sky Pillar sect's External Affairs Deacon, Han Qiusheng. I will be the host of this tournament. In this year's Grand Entrance Tournament, there will be 40 young martial artists from the Royal Azure Cloud Kingdom who will participate in the arena battles. The top 10 martial artists who emerge victorious will have the qualifications to enter our school." Han Qiusheng's expression was dignified as he introduced the meaning of this tournament and the simple rules and procedures. After that, he pointed to the thin middle-aged man beside him and introduced, "This is our sect's External Affairs Deacon, Yang Kailan. Next, let's invite Deacon Yang to introduce the rules of the tournament." Yang Kailan was a middle-aged man with a thin face and dark skin. His eyes flashed with a sharp light from time to time. He said in a deep voice, "In this tournament, the 40 cultivators participating in the tournament will be drawn by Deacon Han in front of everyone to determine the order of battles. The winner will advance and the loser will be eliminated. There is only one chance. The tournament is limited to 15 minutes. Please cherish this opportunity and do your best. There are no restrictions on the methods used in the tournament. Disability is not prohibited, but external forces and assistance are not allowed." Yang Kailan's voice was not loud, but it was full of energy and clearly spread to every corner of the square. After explaining the rules of the tournament, he pointed to a tall tower at the edge of the square and said in a solemn voice, "Today, I and Deacon Han will jointly preside over the tournament. The 3 genius disciples of our sect are also present to supervise. They will definitely ensure the fairness of the tournament." Hearing his words, the tens of thousands of people in the square all turned their heads and looked at the tower that was more than 10 feet tall. They saw 3 young men and women standing at the top of the tower. Standing in the middle was a peerless beauty wearing a plain white dress. It was Yun Yao. The 2 young men beside Yun Yao were Bai Wuchen and Hao Meng. The 3 of them stood proudly at the top of the tower. Their clothes fluttered in the wind, but their bodies were as tall and straight as pine trees. They had a noble aura. In an instant, the tens of thousands of people and cultivators in the square were attracted by the 3's heroic appearance. They revealed deep admiration and worship. A moment later, Han Xiaoxing announced that the large competition was about to begin. Only then did the people in the square withdraw their shocked and admiring gazes. Han Xiaoxing, he took out 40 jade lots and waved his hand. The numerous jade slips turned into green flowing lights, intertwining with each other as they danced in the air. Each jade stick had the name of a young martial artist. Han Xiaoxing would divide the 40 jade sticks into 20 pairs at random. The martial artists corresponding to each pair of jade lots would have to ascend the high platform and fight to determine the victor. Ku. Hearing her name, the little princess was stunned for a moment. She muttered in a low voice, "I was actually chosen for the first battle?" Ji Tianxing patted her shoulder and smiled encouragingly. "Ku, don't worry. I believe you'll be fine." "Yes, I will do my best." The little princess waved her little fist, her face full of determination. At this time, Han Xiaoxing once again took out a pair of jade lots and read aloud, "The second match, Wei Lingfeng vs. Sun Kaixian." Next, he picked up pairs of jade lots and read out the names of many young martial artists. The third match, Fan Jianren vs. He Shanming. The fourth match, Jiang Baiyu vs. Sun Wuming. The fifth round, when Han Xiaoxing finished reading the results of the 20 lots, he loudly announced the start of the large competition. The two deacons stepped down from the high platform and stood below the platform to watch the battle. A handsome young man ascended the high platform and stood with a sword in his hand. This person's name was Pei Anyu. He was a young genius from the Swallow State who had reached the 4th level of the true energy realm at the age of 17. His expression was calm as he stood on the stage. His gaze fell on the little princess, Ji Ku. The little princess waved her hand at Ji Tianxing and hurriedly ascended the arena with her sword. Although she was only 15 years old, her martial arts talent was extraordinary and she was at the 4th level of the true energy realm. Moreover, she had mentioned to Ji Tianxing that she had reached the peak of the 4th level of the true energy realm and could break through to the 5th level of the true energy realm at any time. This was the first battle of the large competition, so Pei Anyu and the little princess were very cautious. The two of them faced each other for 10 breaths of time, but neither of them had the intention to attack first. The countless spectators below the stage could not help but shout in unison, urging the two of them to make a move quickly. Therefore, Pei Anyu cupped his hands at the little princess and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, I'm sorry to offend you." As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled out his sword with a clang and stabbed it at the little princess as fast as the wind. The little princess was already prepared and did not hesitate to pull out her sword to counterattack, sending out a few dazzling sword lights. Clang, clang, clang. The two of them separated in an instant, and when they brushed past each other, they exchanged 2 moves in an instant. The little princess's strength was indeed superior, and she cut a hole in Pei Anyu's robe. The spectators below the stage immediately burst into exclamations, and many people began to discuss loudly. Pei Anyu's face darkened, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. He did not dare to hold back anymore. After a low shout, he waved his sword at the little princess with all his strength. Clang, clang, clang. The two of them fought again, and their figures flashed and moved around the arena, sending out dazzling sword lights. For a moment, the arena was filled with sword chi, and a fierce wind blew. The two of them fought fiercely, and it was difficult to determine the winner after dozens of moves. Countless spectators cheered and were intoxicated by the fight. However, the little prince, Ji Ling, was like the other top geniuses. He did not even bother to watch the fight on the arena. He secretly stared at Ji Tianxing, and a cold smile flashed in his eyes. "Humph, I'll let you live a little longer. Not long after, this prince will make you suffer a crushing defeat in front of everyone, and then send you to the Western Paradise with a sword. I wonder how you will feel when you are defeated by your lifetime of cultivation?" Unknowingly, 100 breaths of time passed. The little princess and Pei Anyu fought fiercely for more than 50 moves, and the victor was finally decided. The little princess was hit 3 times, and dark red blood gushed out from her wounds, staining her light yellow dress with blood stains. Fortunately, she did not injure any vital parts, and it did not affect the rest of the fight. Pei Anyu's injuries were much more severe. He was hit more than 20 times and his robe was dyed red. Under the heavy injuries, he could no longer hold on, and the treasure sword in his hand was sent flying by the little princess's sword. He could only unwillingly admit defeat. Seeing Pei Anyu admit defeat in front of everyone, Deacon Han Qiusheng announced the result loudly. The first round, Pei Anyu loses, and Ji Ku advances. The crowd in the square burst into cheers, and a torrential discussion sounded out. Pei Anyu left the stage in a sorry state. The little princess stood proudly on the high platform, revealing a face full of smiles, enjoying the cheers and praises of the crowd. A moment later, the little princess also walked down the arena and returned to Ji Tianxing's side. Ji Tianxing hurriedly helped her bandage her wounds and let her consume a pill to recover her true essence. Chapter 74. Following this, the second match began. A handsome black-robed youth and a youth wearing fiery red armor walked onto the stage at the same time. That handsome black-robed youth was precisely one of the black and white heroes, Wei Lingfeng, a genius ranked in the top 10 of the Azure Cloud Kingdom. And that youth martial artist wearing fiery red armor was a young master of some influential family in the Imperial City. Although this person had the strength of the third level of the True Element realm and also had some fame in the Imperial City, he was absolutely not Wei Lingfeng's match. After all, Wei Lingfeng's strength reached the fifth level of the True Element realm. The tens of thousands of spectators in the plaza had all heard of Wei Lingfeng's name before and knew his strength. Therefore, no one was optimistic about that youth wearing fiery red armor called Sun Kaixian. Seeing the two people each holding their treasured swords and confronting each other after ascending the stage, countless spectators started discussing. With Wei Lingfeng's strength, he doesn't need to fight at all and can definitely rank in the top 10. Yeah, Wei Lingfeng is a genius ranked in the top 10. Sun Kaixian is absolutely not his match. I reckon that Sun Kaixian can at most last 10 moves under Wei Lingfeng's hands and will be defeated. 10 moves? I think he'll be defeated in 6 moves. 5 moves? At most 5 moves. Just as everyone was discussing animatedly, Sun Kaixian on the stage opened his mouth to speak. His expression was very ugly, and his tone was filled with helplessness as he said to Wei Lingfeng, "Brother Wei, forget it, if we don't fight this match, I'm willing to admit defeat." Want to be a carp leaping over the Dragon Gate and enter the Sky Pillar sect as a disciple? It doesn't just rely on strength, it also relies on luck. No one would have thought that Sun Kaixian actually did not draw his sword to fight and directly admitted defeat. The crowd in the plaza immediately burst into an uproar. Countless people started discussing. Some people mocked Sun Kaixian for being cowardly and afraid to fight, actually directly admitting defeat without fighting. But some people felt that Sun Kaixian's action was wise. Rather than being defeated after exchanging a few moves, it was better to directly admit defeat. Furthermore, when everyone heard Sun Kaixian's words, they all understood his meaning. He also had the desire to enter the Sky Pillar sect and soar to the heavens in one bound. It was just that his luck was too bad, being drawn to fight with Wei Lingfeng. This was fate. Just as he said, wanting to be a carp leaping over the Dragon Gate to become a true dragon, not only relied on strength, it also required a certain amount of luck. Deacon Han Qiusheng loudly announced the results. Wei Lingfeng won, and Sun Kaixian was eliminated. The two of them left the ring respectively. The audience below the ring was still discussing endlessly. Next, the third battle began. 2 young martial artists stepped onto the arena and began to fight with murderous intent. One of the young men who used a saber was called Fan Jianren. This name brought him a lot of trouble, and he was often ridiculed and mocked by others. His opponents then made an issue out of it, mocking and insulting him without restraint in order to provoke him. The result was obvious. Fan Jianren lost his sense of propriety in his rage and was unable to display his full strength. Regretfully, he was defeated. Next, the 4th and 5th matches were carried out in order. Pairs of young martial artists ascended the ring one after another. After a fierce battle, the outcome was decided amidst the discussions and cheers of tens of thousands of spectators. The loser was miserably eliminated and left the stage dejectedly. The winner would advance to the next round and enjoy the cheers and praises of countless people. 2 hours passed. During this period, a total of 14 pairs of martial artists went up the stage to fight, and 7 of them were eliminated. Among the 7 that successfully advanced were top geniuses like Jiang Baiyu and Jian Wusheng. Finally, the 15th battle began, and it was Ji Tianxing's turn to enter the ring. His opponent was a young martial artist at the 4th level of the true element realm called Wan Silin. This person was the young master of the imperial city's influential Wan clan. In the past, he had become enemies with Ji Tianxing, and there were grievances between them. Wan Silin was the first to jump onto the ring. Standing on the high platform, he sneered at Ji Tianxing and even hooked his finger in ridicule. A cold light flashed in Ji Tianxing's eyes as he walked onto the ring with the black dragon sword in hand. Instantly, the gazes of tens of thousands of spectators gathered on Ji Tianxing, and they started to discuss enthusiastically with complicated expressions. Ji Tianxing has finally entered the ring. This is his first battle. Although this fellow has recovered to the true element realm, I don't know what level he is at. Can he defeat Wan Silin? In my opinion, no matter how fast Ji Tianxing's strength recovers, it is impossible for him to defeat Wan Silin, who is at the 4th level of the true element realm. I heard that Wan Silin has a grudge with Ji Tianxing. Wan Silin will definitely defeat Ji Tianxing at all costs. Whether Ji Tianxing is a good-for-nothing or a genius who has recovered to the true element realm will be revealed soon. On the stage, Wan Silin looked at Ji Tianxing with a cold smile. His tone was filled with ridicule as he said, "Ji Tianxing, back then, you slapped me 3 times in front of everyone in the gambling house. I will never forget this grudge. Today, I will beat you down in front of the entire city and make you beg for mercy. I will avenge my humiliation." Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said in an indifferent tone, "Back then, you schemed against my Ji family's disciples and made them addicted to gambling. You even instigated them to steal 1,000,000 taels of silver to gamble. I am only giving you a small punishment. I have already given your Wan family a lot of face. You want me to beg for mercy? Maybe in your next life." Ji Tianxing curled his lips and revealed a contemptuous smile. Wan Silin's eyes were filled with rage. He shouted in a low voice, "Ji Tianxing, you are too arrogant. Everyone in the city is saying that you have recovered to the true element realm. I would like to see how far you can recover in a short month. You good-for-nothing Ji want to turn the tables and wash away your humiliation? You must be dreaming." Wan Silin shouted angrily. He immediately drew his sword and attacked Ji Tianxing with all his might. Swish, swish, swish. 3 streaks of sharp sword light slashed towards Ji Tianxing's 3 vital points. "We will know who is the good-for-nothing later." Ji Tianxing sneered, but he did not show any signs of drawing his sword. He used a mysterious footwork and his figure flickered. He easily dodged the 3 streaks of sword light. "You are not drawing your sword? You are too arrogant." Wan Silin looked as if he had been greatly insulted. His eyes were filled with rage. He waved his sword again and 5 streaks of sword light enveloped Ji Tianxing's figure. Ji Tianxing's figure flickered again and again. He easily dodged the sword light again and said expressionlessly, "You are not worthy for me to draw my sword." The martial artists around the ring were staring at the battle in the ring. Their nerves were tense. Seeing Wan Silin's fierce attacks and Ji Tianxing not drawing his sword, the crowd began to whisper to each other. At this moment, when the crowd heard Ji Tianxing's confident words, they burst into an uproar. Ji Tianxing is really arrogant. That guy is just putting on a brave front. If he is really so strong, why is he dodging and not fighting back? So what if he has recovered to the true element realm? He is still no match for Wan Silin. It seems that Ji Tianxing is only that capable. It is a fool's dream to think that he can get into the top 10 in the tournament. Chapter 75. In the arena, Wan Silin was enraged by Ji Tianxing's provocation. He did not hesitate to use all his strength and used his ultimate skill. He waved his sword and slashed out 8 rays of sword light. Gale 8 swords. 8 rays of dazzling sword light spread out. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew on the arena and rolled towards Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing's expression did not change. His figure flashed 3 times and he was 10 meters away. Not only did he dodge Wan Silin's ultimate skill, but he also moved behind Wan Silin like a ghost. "It's time to end this," Ji Tianxing shouted coldly. He suddenly raised his right hand and used his palm as a knife to slash at Wan Silin's neck. Wan Silin had just used his ultimate skill and was at his weakest point. Suddenly, he heard Ji Tianxing's voice from behind him. His face was filled with fear and shock. Before he could react, his neck was hit by Ji Tianxing's palm. Bam! In the muffled sound, Ji Tianxing's palm burst out with a powerful force. Wan Silin's eyes turned black and fainted on the spot. He kicked Wan Silin's back again, sending him flying out on the spot. Wan Silin fell off the stage in a sorry state. There was no doubt that Ji Tianxing had won. From the beginning to the end, he did not even use his weapon. He defeated Wan Silin, who was at the 4th level of the true energy realm, in just 3 moves. At that moment, the entire square was silent. Tens of thousands of people looked at Ji Tianxing in shock. They could not believe this result. After a while, the crowd in the square came back to their senses and burst into discussions. How is this possible? Ji Tianxing was still a trash in the body refining realm last month. In just 1 month, he recovered to the true energy realm. Not only did he break the illusory weapon Shen formation, but he also defeated Wan Silin in 3 moves? This is unbelievable. The most important thing is that Ji Tianxing did not even draw his sword. He didn't even use his weapon, yet he easily defeated Wan Silin. How strong is his true strength? The square was noisy. Those who were mocking Ji Tianxing and determined that he couldn't defeat Wan Silin were so ashamed that their faces and ears turned red. They wished they could find a hole to hide in. At this moment, Han Xiaoxing loudly announced the result. Wan Si was defeated, and Ji Tianxing was victorious. Only then did Ji Tianxing calmly walk down the stage under the gazes of tens of thousands of people and return to the little princess's side. The little princess had seen him easily defeat Wan Silin with her own eyes. She was so excited that her little face was flushed red. She was agitated and excited. "Big brother Tianxing, you're amazing." "Ha! You didn't see the reaction of those bastards. They were all stunned and dumbfounded. Just now, they were laughing at you for overestimating yourself. Now they are so ashamed that they want to die." "Tianxing Gidge, I knew you wouldn't be defeated." Ji Tianxing had won, but the little princess was even happier and more excited than him. Seeing her dancing with joy, Ji Tianxing revealed a gentle smile. "Alright, Cuckoo, there's still the 2nd round of the competition later. Whether or not you can enter the Sky-Bearing sect will depend on the next round. You should hurry up and recover your true essence." The little princess nodded and quickly calmed down. She silently refined the medicinal power and recovered her true essence. Following that, a few more pairs of young martial artists ascended the ring and began to compete and fight. Although the martial artists who went up the stage were all at least at the 2nd level of the true essence realm and fought with all their might, the battle was very intense. However, Ji Tianxing did not have much interest in the fighting on the stage. His eyes silently swept across the little prince, Jian Wuxing, and the black and white heroes. No one knew what he was thinking. Finally, the last battle of the 1st round began. The little prince, Ji Ling, walked up the stage with a confident smile on his face. He stood proudly on the stage. When the spectators in the square saw the little prince appear, they immediately cheered excitedly. Especially those young girls and girls, they all revealed deep admiration in their eyes and cheered for him without caring about their image. There was no other way. Ji Ling's reputation in the Clear Sky Kingdom was too resounding. He was recognized by the people as a benevolent and righteous gentleman who had both ability and integrity. Who knew how many young girls and young ladies regarded him as their dream lover and wanted to marry him. Ji Ling's opponent was called Pei Qianfan. He was a genius about 18 years old and had the strength of the 3rd level of the true essence realm. Although Ji Ling's voice was extremely loud, tens of thousands of people in the square were cheering for him. However, Pei Qianfan's martial talent was extraordinary and he was young and frivolous. He would definitely not be afraid of battle. As everyone knew, Jiling's innate dantian was damaged and he was destined to be a weakling in the body refinement realm for the rest of his life. Half a month ago, he obtained the red star flower and repaired his damaged dantian, successfully reaching the true essence realm. However, only half a month had passed and he was at most at the second level of the true essence realm. It was impossible for him to reach the third level of the true essence realm. No matter how monstrous a person was, it was also impossible to rise 3 levels in half a month. This was common knowledge in the martial Tao. Pei Qianfan predicted this point. That was why he was fearless and confidently drew his sword to attack. "Young prince, sorry to offend you." Pei Qianfan gave a low cry and swung his sword, slashing out 4 sword lights. His body was as agile as a swallow as he pounced towards Jiling. Jiling was immediately enveloped by the sword light and was surrounded by danger. However, his expression did not change. A gentle and confident smile still hung on his lips. When the sword light arrived in front of him, a cold light flashed across his eyes before he suddenly drew his sword to counterattack. Clang! The treasured sword was unsheathed and gave off a crisp sword hum, lighting up with a dazzling sword light. Swoosh! The piercing cold sword light drew a strange trajectory in the air. With an unparalleled speed, it instantly defeated Pei Qianfan's 4 sword lights. The crowd only heard a light ding sound and saw the treasured sword in Pei Qianfan's hand was sent flying. The treasured sword drew an arc in the air and fell below the stage. At the same time, the treasured sword in Jiling's hand was also placed on Pei Qianfan's neck. Pei Qianfan's figure that was as swift as the wind also suddenly stiffened and stopped. The entire audience was silent. The tens of thousands of people in the plaza all opened their eyes wide in shock, revealing thick disbelief. All the discussions and cheers came to an abrupt end. Everyone was stunned. No one dared to believe that young Prince Jiling's strength was actually so formidable. He actually easily broke Pei Qianfan's sword move and instantly defeated Pei Qianfan. Pei Qianfan, who was at the 3rd level of the true element realm, actually could not even block one of his sword. This was too shocking. Just how formidable was young Prince Jiling's strength? 4th level of the true element realm? Or 5th level? Or 6th level? Thinking up to here, countless people sucked in a cold breath, revealing fanatical worship. In the next instant, earth-shaking cheers and shouts erupted from the crowd. Countless people started discussing in high spirits. Young Prince Jiling's sword that seemed to be aided by a god deeply shocked everyone. The plaza was noisy to the extreme. Everyone was guessing Jiling's strength and realm. Only Ji Tianxing was expressionless. His eyes became more and more gloomy. Chapter 76. After Han Qiuxing announced the results of the matches, the first round of the grand competition ended. Of the 40 young martial artists participating in the grand competition, 20 were eliminated, and the 20 who won successfully advanced. Han Qiuxing ascended the stage once again and took out 20 jade lots, starting to draw lots to decide the second round of matches. Swish, 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 swish. 20 jade lots flew into the sky, transforming into streams of azure light, interweaving and dancing. Everyone looked up at that cluster of azure light, waiting for the results of the draw. To the martial artists participating in the second round of the competition, the results of the draw were abnormally important. This concerned whether they could enter the sky-bearing sect or not, and it concerned their fate. Finally, the 20 jade lots were randomly divided into 10 pairs, quietly floating in front of Han Qiuxing. He took out 2 jade lots and announced the results of the draw loudly. First match, Jian Wuxing vs. Qiu Yuanwu. Second match, Ji Ku vs. Northmont Buluo. Third match, Wei Lingfeng vs. Yin Jian. Fourth match, Ji Ling vs. Wulong. Fifth match, Ji Tianxing vs. Jiang Baiyu. Sixth match, Han Qiuxing consecutively drew 10 pairs of jade lots and announced the order and opponents of the 20 martial artists. Every time he finished reading the names of a pair of martial artists, it would arouse a burst of discussion from the crowd in the plaza. And when he read the 5th pair of martial artists' names, The tens of thousands of people in the plaza all cried out in surprise. No one would have thought that Ji Tianxing would actually face off against Jiang Baiyu. This battle was extremely important. The loser would be eliminated, and the winner would enter the top 10 of the grand competition and successfully enter the sky-bearing sect as a disciple. This way, between Ji Tianxing and Jiang Baiyu, one would definitely be eliminated, and the other would enter the sky-bearing sect. This match was the battle of fate. Yet, Ji Tianxing and Jiang Baiyu, these two people were the most discussed topics in the past 3 days. Jiang Baiyu failed to clear the formation, while Ji Tianxing successfully cleared the illusionary weapon Profound Formation. When the Imperial City citizens discussed this matter, they would all mention Jiang Baiyu's name, using his failure to set off Ji Tianxing's success. Many people subconsciously felt that Ji Tianxing might be stronger than Jiang Baiyu. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to successfully break the formation. However, this was only everyone's guess. Ji Tianxing and Jiang Baiyu had never fought head-on before. And now, Han Xiaoxing's random drawing had tied the two of them together. The tens of thousands of people in the square were all thinking, could this be the will of the heavens? Was it destined that the two of them would have a fated battle? Soon, Han Xiaoxing announced the order and candidates for the 10 matches, and then loudly announced the start of the competition. The two young martial artists stepped into the ring and stood 10 meters away from each other. They were facing each other with murderous intent. One of the blue-robed young men was called Qiu Yuanwu. He was a sword Dao genius with some fame in the Clear Sky Kingdom. At such a young age, he already had the strength of the 4th level of the True Element realm. The other young man was dressed in black. His appearance was average, and there was a scar on his right cheek. This person was none other than Jian Wuxing, a cultivation maniac who was obsessed with swords. He had the strength of the 6th level of the True Element realm. In the past, he had always been suppressed by Ji Tianxing and could only be ranked 2nd in the Clear Sky Kingdom. Now, among the 20 young martial artists, he was the #1 expert on the surface. Therefore, when Qiu Yuanwu found out that his opponent was Jian Wuxing, his heart was filled with helplessness and despair. The difference in strength between the two was 2 levels. The result of the battle was obvious. Jian Wuxing only used 5 moves and easily defeated Qiu Yuanwu. Han Xiaoxing announced the result of the battle on the spot. Jian Wuxing successfully advanced to the top 10 and obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. Qiu Yuanwu was miserably eliminated. He could only walk down the ring with a heart full of regret. He left unwillingly. The second round of the competition began. The little princess's opponent was Beishan Buyuo. He was the young master of the Imperial City's Beishan aristocratic family and was also a young genius. He was also at the 4th level of the True Element realm like the little princess. Their sword Dao attainments were very exquisite. However, the little princess unleashed her full strength in this battle and even used her trump card. The two fought for a quarter of an hour and exchanged over 100 moves before the outcome was decided. The little princess defeated Beishan Buyuo at the cost of 7 sword strikes. She entered the top 10 and obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. After Han Xiaoxing announced the result, the little princess walked down the ring with a pale face. She hurriedly bandaged her wounds and consumed medicinal pills to recover her true essence. The third battle was even more exciting. Wei Lingfeng, one of the black and white heroes, and his opponent, Yin Jian, both used their full strength and displayed incomparably exquisite sword techniques, causing the tens of thousands of spectators to cheer. In the end, Wei Lingfeng defeated his opponent and obtained victory, smoothly entering the top 10. When the fourth battle began, the little prince, Ji Ling, and Wu Long stepped onto the ring. Wu Long was a youth around 20 years old. His strength had reached the 4th level of the True Element realm. As for Ji Ling's strength, it was still hard to unravel. The two of them only exchanged over 20 moves on the stage, and Ji Ling easily defeated Wu Long. The tens of thousands of people in the square cheered loudly for Ji Ling's victory. The crowd erupted into discussions. Everyone did not dare to believe that Ji Ling's strength actually rose to such a degree in a short half a month. He could even easily defeat a 4th-level True Element realm martial artist. This was simply too inconceivable. Ji Tianxing had been observing Ji Ling and Wulong's battle all along. He could tell that Ji Ling was concealing his strength and did not use his full strength at all. Ji Ling's true strength was extremely likely to have already reached the 7th level of the true element realm. If he attacked with all his might, he only needed 3 to 5 moves and could defeat Wulong. This also made Ji Tianxing very certain that the God-seizing bead was definitely refined by Ji Ling. After all, the God-seizing bead seized his lifetime's cultivation. After Ji Ling completely refined the God-seizing bead, he could possess true element realm 7th level strength. Thinking up to here, Ji Tianxing clenched both fists tightly. A hint of icy cold killing intent flashed across in his eyes. Ji Ling, oh Ji Ling! The person who instigated Ling Yunfei to snatch the God-seizing bead was you. The person who saved Ling Yunfei at the Apricot Manor that night was also you. Turns out that you're the mastermind behind the scenes, the most despicable and sinister fellow. Very soon, the 5th match began. Ji Tianxing and Jiang Baiyu ascended the stage at the same time, each hugging a treasure sword and confronting each other on the stage. Ji Tianxing looked at Jiang Baiyu expressionlessly, his gaze cold. He did not have any enmity with Jiang Baiyu. Fighting on the stage today was also dictated by fate. But Jiang Baiyu glared at him with a cold smile on his face, his eyes surging with thick rage and killing intent. Ji Tianxing, didn't expect that your opponent would actually be me, right? Fate is really miraculous. I really have to thank Deacon Han properly for letting you and me fight in front of everyone. Jiang Baiyu revealed a smug cold smile, his tone filled with anger. In these 3 days, you were in the limelight, while I became everyone's laughingstock. Ji Tianxing, do you know how much I hate you? Today, I'm going to defeat you fair and square in front of several tens of thousands of Imperial City citizens. I want to let everyone see that I, Jiang Baiyu, am the true martial Dao genius. And you just barged through the grand array by luck. You're absolutely not my match. Chapter 77. Jiang Baiyu's voice clearly spread throughout more than half of the square, and the tens of thousands of Imperial City citizens heard it clearly. A commotion broke out in the crowd, and many people were whispering to each other. In these 3 days, the most discussed people in the Imperial City were Jiang Baiyu and Ji Tianxing. Jiang Baiyu had become Ji Tianxing's stepping stone to rise again. It was reasonable for him to be so angry and to harbor resentment toward Ji Tianxing. It was so much so that many of the cultivators in the square felt their blood boil from Jiang Baiyu's words. They also agreed with Jiang Baiyu's words and looked forward to the scene of Jiang Baiyu defeating Ji Tianxing in public. For a moment, cheers broke out in the crowd, and many people cheered for Jiang Baiyu. On the stage, Ji Tianxing's expression was still calm as usual. He looked at Jiang Baiyu indifferently, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a slight smile with a hint of ridicule. Jiang Baiyu, I sympathize with you. However, this might be your fate. Jiang Baiyu's expression became even more gloomy. He glared at him with a sharp gaze and shouted, Ji Tianxing, what do you mean by this? Ji Tianxing sneered mockingly. Back then, when I was the #1 genius in the Imperial City, you were trampled under my feet and were not famous. 3 days ago, you failed to break through the formation, and I succeeded in breaking through the illusory armament mystic formation. It was your failure that caused the news of me recovering my strength to spread throughout the Imperial City, causing a sensation. Today, you will still be defeated by me and have no chance to enter the Sky Pillar sect. No matter in the past or now, you are my stepping stone. This is your fate. Tell me, should I sympathize with you? Hearing this, the tens of thousands of people in the square were in an uproar. Everyone revealed complicated expressions and broke out into a torrential discussion. Oh my God! Ji Tianxing is actually so confident. Too arrogant. He's simply arrogant. The former #1 genius is back again, and he's still so confident and arrogant. If Ji Tianxing defeats Jiang Baiyu today, then Jiang Baiyu will really be like what he said, destined to be a stepping stone. How pitiful! The deafening sounds of discussion spread throughout the square. Jiang Baiyu was so angry that his face turned ashen. He was so angry that his entire body was trembling. His eyes emitted a strong killing intent. Ji Tianxing, you are too arrogant. I'll cripple you right now and let you know that trash will always be trash. The enraged Jiang Baiyu shouted angrily as he drew his sword and charged at Ji Tianxing. 8 golden snake swords. As soon as he made his move, he exerted all his strength and used his most exquisite sword technique. 8 golden sword lights pierced towards Ji Tianxing, attacking his vital points from all directions, enveloping his figure and leaving him with nowhere to hide. Ji Tianxing did not retreat. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He immediately activated the power of the sword embryo and displayed 6 flashes of sword chi. Swish, 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 swish. The 8 golden sword lights were immediately broken and dissipated in the blink of an eye. Jiang Baiyu's expression changed. He pounced towards Ji Tianxing again and slashed out 8 sword lights. Golden snake wild dance. Ji Tianxing's expression did not change. He held the black dragon sword in his left hand and performed the sword control art with his right hand, controlling the 6 flashes of sword chi to counterattack. Swish, 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 swish. The 6 flashes of sword chi instantly split into 12 flashes of sword chi. They danced and intertwined rapidly, forming a sword net. The sword net blocked the 8 flashes of sword chi and enveloped Jiang Baiyu, killing him at lightning speed. Jiang Baiyu immediately fell into a perilous situation and was forced to retreat repeatedly by the sword net. In the blink of an eye, several wounds appeared on his body from the sword chi, and dark red blood flowed out. Damn it! What kind of sword technique is this? Jiang Baiyu was shocked and furious. He swung his sword in a flurry to block the sword net. Ji Tianxing was just 6 meters away from him. He used the sword control art to control the sword net to attack and closed in step by step. Jiang Baiyu did not have the strength to counterattack at all. He could not block the sword net's attack at all, let alone get close to Ji Tianxing. The tens of thousands of commoners in the square were also dumbfounded. Everyone revealed a horrified expression and erupted into disbelieving exclamations and discussions. Oh my God! What kind of sword technique is that? Why have I never heard of it before? This is too unbelievable. Ji Tianxing can actually control sword chi and form a sword net to attack? Is this something a true element realm martial artist can do? It is said that only origin core realm martial artists can control sword chi to attack from a distance, right? This kind of sword technique is simply unimaginable. Today is really an eye-opener. No wonder Ji Tianxing is so confident and arrogant and does not take Jiang Baiyu seriously. It turns out that he has mastered such a miraculous sword technique. He has the capital to be arrogant. Jiang Baiyu can't even break through that sword net. He can't even touch the corner of Ji Tianxing's clothes. How can he still fight? Sigh, Jiang Baiyu will lose for sure. Soon, 100 breaths of time passed. Jiang Baiyu's white robe was cut into threads by the sword chi and turned into a pile of rags. It was really not enough to cover his body. Moreover, he was covered in wounds all over. There were at least 60 wounds all over his body. Blood kept gushing out from his wounds, dyeing his white robe dark red. He had completely turned into a bloody man. Jiang Baiyu tried his best to break out of the encirclement and unleashed his full strength without caring about anything else, wanting to break through the sword net's blockade and strangulation. However, the sword net covered a radius of 3 meters. Under Ji Tianxing's control, it seemed to have intelligence and spirituality. Even if Jiang Baiyu could tear a gap in the sword net, Ji Tianxing would immediately control the sword chi to patch up the gap. In this way, Jiang Baiyu would never be able to escape from the sword net's strangulation. His injuries kept worsening. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and his strength was also rapidly depleting. After 10 breaths of time, the sword in Jiang Baiyu's hand was sent flying by the sword chi and fell far away from the arena. The sword net suddenly dissipated and turned back into 6 sword chi. They floated quietly beside him and pointed directly at his head and throat. Ji Tianxing looked at Jiang Baiyu and shouted in an indifferent tone, "Jiang Baiyu, this is your fate. Admit defeat." Jiang Baiyu, who was covered in blood and had a bloody face, stood on the arena in a daze. His body was on the verge of collapse. He could not accept this result. Until now, he still could not believe that he had lost to Ji Tianqing. Moreover, he had lost so miserably. At this moment, the pride and confidence in his heart had been shattered by Ji Tianqing. Put down his dignity and admit defeat? And in front of tens of thousands of imperial city citizens? Jiang Baiyu could not do it. He glared at Ji Tianqing with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. He roared at the top of his lungs, "No, Ji Tianqing, I will never lower my head and admit defeat to you." Ji Tianqing frowned and said expressionlessly, "You won't admit defeat? Then I'll throw you down." As his voice fell, his figure flashed and rushed in front of Jiang Baiyu. He lifted his leg and ruthlessly kicked Jiang Baiyu's chest. Jiang Baiyu was severely injured and was already at the end of his rope. He was completely powerless to block or dodge. Bam! With a muffled sound, Jiang Baiyu was sent flying. He drew an arc in the air and fell off the arena with a plop. He rolled a few rounds before coming to a stop. He struggled to get up and glared at Ji Tianqing with rage. Ji Tianqing. The incomparable humiliation caused the blood in his body to flow in reverse. He was so angry that he trembled. He was just about to speak when he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted on the spot. Chapter 78. A moment ago, Jiang Baiyu stepped onto the stage full of confidence. He threatened to defeat Ji Tianqing in public and prove that he was the genius. But at this moment, Ji Tianqing was completely unscathed, but he was covered in cuts and bruises, becoming a bloody man. He was utterly defeated. He refused to admit defeat and was kicked off the stage by Ji Tianqing. He even vomited blood and fainted on the spot. What kind of disgrace was this? The tens of thousands of commoners and martial artists in the square all witnessed this scene with their own eyes. After today, this matter would definitely spread throughout the imperial city and the Azure Cloud Empire. Jiang Baiyu would definitely become the laughingstock of everyone. The tens of thousands of commoners in the square discussed animatedly. Everyone's eyes when looking at Ji Tianqing were filled with shock and disbelief. At this time, Han Qiusheng stepped onto the stage and loudly announced the results of the competition. The utterly disgraced Jiang Baiyu was eliminated miserably. Ji Tianqing successfully entered the top 10 and obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Tianqing walked down the stage and returned to the little princess's side. The little princess danced with joy, her eyes surging with thick excitement and agitation. Too inconceivable. Big brother Tianqing, what sword art did you execute just now? It's too marvelous. Ji Tianqing smiled slightly and did not explain. The little princess pulled his arm and said joyfully, "That's great. Big brother Tianqing, you finally got your wish and can enter the Sky Pillar sect. Both of us passed the competition and can enter the Sky Pillar sect. This has always been my goal and dream." Ji Tianqing understood her intentions and also knew the reason why she was so excited. He revealed a gentle smile and reached out to pinch the little princess's pretty face. "Cuckoo, we'll be senior brother and sister in the future." The little princess nodded repeatedly, her big clear eyes revealing thick anticipation. Following that, pairs of young martial artists stepped onto the stage one after another and began the crucial decisive battle. About 2 hours later, the remaining 5 pairs of young martial artists all finished their matches. The second round of the competition ended here. Han Qiusheng stepped onto the stage and loudly announced the final results. The second round of this year's grand entrance competition has ended. 10 young martial artists have successfully advanced and obtained the qualification to enter our sect. These 10 martial artists are Ji Ling, Jian Wuxing, Ji Tianqing, Wei Lingfeng, Ji Ku. Han Qiusheng read out 10 names. These 10 people would become disciples of the Sky-bearing sect. The martial artists and commoners in the square immediately started discussing noisily. Some people cheered happily, some were full of regret, and some had complicated expressions. The tens of thousands of spectators originally thought that Jiang Baiyu would definitely enter the top 10 and enter the Sky Pillar sect. After all, Jiang Baiyu was one of the top 10 geniuses in the Clear Sky Kingdom. However, no one expected that he would encounter Ji Tianxing and be defeated by Ji Tianxing. In the end, he left the arena regretfully. As for the trash Ji Tianxing, who had been ridiculed by everyone and whose strength had fallen to the body refinement realm, he had successfully obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. This was a major upset in this competition, and it exceeded everyone's expectations. In addition, there was another person in this competition that no one had expected. Young Prince Ji Ling. No one expected that Ji Ling, whose innate dantian was damaged, would suddenly become a different person. Not only did he repair his dantian, but he also defeated several 4th-level True Element Realm geniuses and finally obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. This was absolutely an accident. After a short moment, when the discussions in the square gradually weakened, Han Qiusheng once again announced in a loud voice, "Although this year's competition has already determined the top 10 martial artists and will become disciples of the Sky Pillar sect. However, the third round of the competition will be held next to determine the strength rankings of the 10 martial artists. Martial artists with different rankings will receive different treatment after entering the Sky Pillar sect. The martial artist ranked first will receive the Sky Pillar sect's key nurturing." Han Qiusheng's words instantly ignited the hot blood in the hearts of the 10 young martial artists. Who didn't want to seize first place, become a genius that everyone focused on, and receive the Sky Pillar sect's key nurturing? This was absolutely the best opportunity to have a meteoric rise and soar to the sky in one go. The 10 young martial artists secretly clenched their fists as dense battle intent surged in their hearts. Ji Tianxing was no exception. Before participating in the Sky Pillar sect's entrance competition, he had already secretly made up his mind. Not only did he want to obtain the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect, but he also wanted to enter the Sky Pillar sect as first place. Only in this way could he receive the Sky Pillar sect's key nurturing and become a peerless genius like Yun Yao in the future. At this moment, Han Qiusheng's voice boomed like a bell. According to the strength of the 10 martial artists, the Sky Pillar sect has made a preliminary ranking. The rules of the third round of the competition are rather special. There will be no drawing of lots, but a challenge system. If anyone has any objections to their ranking, they can issue a challenge to a higher ranking. If they succeed, they will replace their ranking. If they fail, they will retain their original ranking. The rules of the third round of the competition were rather simple, and everyone understood as soon as they heard it. Immediately after, Han Qiusheng loudly announced the rankings of the 10 martial artists. First place, Ji Ling. Second place, Jian Wuxing. Third place, Ji Tianxing. Fourth place, Wei Lingfeng. Fifth place, eighth place Ji Ke. Ninth place. After Han Qiusheng announced the rankings of the 10 martial artists, the tens of thousands of people in the square were in an uproar. Everyone revealed shocked and puzzled expressions as they discussed in confusion. The young prince is actually ranked first? How is this possible? Although the young prince easily defeated Wu Long, who was at the 4th level of the True Element Realm, he might not be able to defeat Jian Wuxing. How can he be ranked first? The Sky Pillar sect has always been fair and just. There shouldn't be a mistake. The young prince must have concealed his strength. Ji Tianxing is actually ranked third? There's something wrong with this ranking. I feel that it's reasonable for Ji Tianxing to be ranked third. He mastered that sword net and easily defeated Zhang Baiyu. I guess they're all dissatisfied with this ranking, right? There will definitely be a good show to watch later. The discussions of tens of thousands of people converged into a torrent of sound waves that wantonly surged and spread throughout the square. The 10 martial artists also had complicated expressions. Obviously, they were dissatisfied with the ranking and were eager to issue challenges. After Han Qiusheng announced the start of the third round of the competition, someone immediately stepped onto the stage. This person was dressed in black and had a scar on his face. It was Jian Wuxing, who was ranked second. Ever since Ji Tianxing had fallen to the body refinement realm and become a cripple, he had been recognized as the number one genius. But now, the young prince, Ji Ling, was ranked first, and he was ranked second. Among the 10 martial artists, he was the most depressed and dissatisfied. No one was surprised that he would be the first to jump onto the stage and issue a challenge. They all thought that it was natural. Jian Wusheng stood on the stage with a cold expression. He stared at Ji Ling below the stage and shouted in a deep voice, Jian Wusheng challenged the young prince. Please enlighten me. Chapter 79. When Jian Wusheng's voice spread throughout the square, everyone's eyes were focused on Ji Ling. Ji Ling seemed to have expected that Jian Wusheng would challenge him. His expression was calm as usual. He stepped onto the arena and stood 10 meters away from Jian Wusheng. There was still a confident smile on his face. Jian Wusheng, Deacon Han's ranking is the final results. No matter how unwilling you are, it's useless. You're no match for me, Ji Ling said calmly. His tone was firm, as if he was stating a fact. Jian Wusheng's expression became gloomier. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He sneered in a low voice. Young prince, it's too early to say that. We'll only know who's number one after we fight. Young prince, I'm sorry. After saying that, he drew his sword and charged at Ji Ling at lightning speed. He was so fast that he left an afterimage behind him. Swoosh. It was an extremely sharp and fast sword. The tens of thousands of spectators were stunned. They held their breaths and worried for Ji Ling. That sharp and dazzling sword light was like a thunderbolt tearing the night sky apart. The young geniuses' expressions changed. They knew that they couldn't block Jian Wusheng's sword. However, Ji Ling's expression didn't change. He was still calm and confident. Crimson Fire Overlord Sword. Ji Ling also drew his sword. He let out a low shout and swung his sword, creating a crescent-shaped sword light. The crimson sword light surged with flames, creating surging heat waves and strong winds in the arena. Bam! The two sword lights collided with a muffled sound. Jian Wusheng's stunning sword was defeated by Ji Ling's sword. Jian Wusheng was also pushed back 5 steps. Third slash of fire waves. Ji Ling shouted again. He swung his crimson sword and chased after Jian Wusheng, slashing out 3 flaming sword lights. Jian Wusheng was surrounded by blazing flames and had nowhere to hide. He could only hurriedly block with his sword. He was shocked and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. Bam, bam, bam. Their swords collided again. Jian Wusheng was pushed back another 6 steps. Next, Ji Ling launched an attack as fast as lightning. Sword light filled the sky, and it was as violent and overbearing as a monstrous flame. Jian Wusheng was at a disadvantage. She was forced to retreat again and again. Seeing Ji Ling completely suppress Jian Wusheng, countless martial artists in the square exclaimed in disbelief. Only then did everyone realize that the little prince had been hiding his true strength all this time. Only now did the little prince show his true strength. This battle was the most dazzling battle since the start of the grand competition. Ji Ling and Jian Wusheng both unleashed their strongest battle prowess and fought fiercely on the stage. Their figures flickered like ghosts, and it was too much for the eyes to take in. Tens of thousands of spectators stared intently at the battle. They were dazzled and excited. Soon, 100 breaths had passed. Ji Ling was still full of true essence. Her movements were as fast as the wind, and there were no injuries on her body. Jian Wusheng, on the other hand, had been stabbed 5 times. Her chest, back, thigh, and arm all had a sword wound that was so deep that her bones could be seen, and blood was gushing out from it. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight and could only helplessly admit defeat. Little prince, I'm inferior. I'm willing to admit defeat. When Jian Wusheng admitted defeat, Ji Ling withdrew his sword and revealed a confident smile. Everyone around the stage had witnessed Ji Ling's true strength. Only then did they believe what she had said. The strength rankings given by the Sky Pillar sect were basically the final rankings. It was very difficult for there to be any deviation. Jian Wusheng retreated from the stage with an ashen face. Han Qiusheng stepped onto the stage and announced loudly, Jian Wusheng's challenge has failed. The original ranking will remain. Who else wants to issue a challenge? All the young geniuses were silent. They didn't dare to issue another challenge. Wei Lingfeng, who was ranked 4th, originally wanted to challenge Ji Tianxing to take 3rd place and avenge Jiang Baiyu. However, after Jian Wusheng's failure, he was full of hesitation and didn't dare to fight. The tens of thousands of people in the square also recognized the ranking announced by Deacon Han. They all believed that Ji Ling was worthy of being the number one genius. However, just as the crowd was whispering and discussing, a tall and handsome black figure ascended the ring. Ji Tianxing, challenged Ji Ling. Ji Tianxing walked onto the stage expressionlessly. He looked coldly at Ji Ling and issued a challenge. Instantly, tens of thousands of people focused their gazes on him. The crowd exclaimed in surprise. "Oh my God! Even Jian Wusheng's challenge has failed. Ji Tianxing still dares to challenge the little prince? This guy really doesn't know what's good for him. The little prince is stronger than Jian Wusheng. He's at least at the 7th level of the true element stage. How dare he question Deacon Han's ranking? How arrogant! Ji Tianxing was once the number one genius. It seems that he's not satisfied with being ranked 3rd. He's still dreaming of taking back the 1st place. I bet that Ji Tianxing is definitely not the little prince's match. He'll be defeated within 30 moves. 30 moves? You think too highly of Ji Tianxing. I think 20 moves are enough." Countless people snorted disdainfully at Ji Tianxing and sneered at his misfortune. They were certain that he would lose without a doubt. Only the little princess looked up at Ji Tianxing from below the stage. She waved her little fist at him and cheered him on. "Big brother Tianxing, I believe in you. Do your best." Amidst the noisy discussions of the crowd, Ji Ling walked onto the stage with a smile on her face. He looked at Ji Tianxing with a mocking gaze as his lips curled into a disdainful sneer. "Ji Tianxing, so what if you've recovered your strength? Do you still think you're the number one genius? You'll pay the price for your challenge. I'll let you know that I'm the number one genius. You'll always be under my feet." Ji Ling's tone was very cold and contained a hint of killing intent. Ji Tianxing was certain that Ji Ling was the despicable mastermind behind the scenes. He was his mortal enemy. Therefore, he wasn't surprised that Ji Ling had the intention to kill him. He looked at Ji Ling with a gloomy gaze and said in an equally cold tone, "Ji Ling, I'll also let you know that strength obtained by scheming is ultimately just a dream. Your confidence and arrogance will end here." As soon as he finished speaking, he instantly activated 6 sword beams and turned them into golden streams of light that attacked Ji Ling, flying sword technique. Flowing light sword net. He held the black dragon sword in his left hand and formed a sword technique in his right hand. He controlled the sword beams to form a sword net that covered Ji Ling's head. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sword beams danced in the air, dragging out a long golden stream of light as they surrounded Ji Ling and attacked. Ji Ling's expression changed slightly. A hint of seriousness flashed in his eyes as he immediately drew his sword to counterattack. Scarlet Overlord Sword. He also erupted with his strongest strength and used his ultimate sword technique. He brandished more than 10 sword beams to forcefully break the sword net. Chapter 80. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ling engaged in a fierce battle on the stage. The flowing light sword net enveloped an area of 3 meters around Ji Ling, making it impossible for him to break through. Ji Tianxing maintained a distance of 5 meters from him, making it impossible for him to get close. The hearts of the people around the stage rose as they were secretly worried for Ji Ling. Everyone had personally witnessed the power of the sword net of flowing light, and they had seen Jiang Baiyu's miserable state of being covered in wounds. Everyone couldn't help but worry. Would the little prince be able to withstand the net of swords? Would he end up in a miserable state like Jiang Baiyu, with ragged clothes and blood all over his body? Ding ding ding! The sound of swords clashing against each other could be heard from the arena. Ji Ling's strength was indeed strong enough. She used the Scarlet Fire Overlord sword to perfection, splashing out sword lights that filled the sky. She actually blocked the majority of the sword chi's attack. Occasionally, some of the sword chi and flowing light would hit him, but when they hit his body, they would make a ding-ding-ding sound. He didn't seem to be injured at all. A moment later, Ji Tianxing discovered some clues and finally understood the reason. Ji Ling was hit by the sword chi 6 times, and her robe was cut 6 times, all on her chest and back. Through the gap in the robe, a layer of dark golden soft armor could be seen. It turned out that Ji Ling was wearing a soft armor that could block weapons. Ji Ling used the Scarlet Fire Overlord sword, using layers of sword light to protect her head and the parts that were not wearing soft armor. His chest and back were protected by the soft armor, so he was not afraid of his flowing light sword net at all. Damn it! Ji Ling is truly despicable and sinister. To actually wear a soft armor, my sword chi can't hurt him. Ji Tianxing's heart was filled with hatred, his eyes surging with a cold light. As Ji Ling blocked the flowing light sword net's attack, she did not forget to sneer at him. Hee, Ji Tianxing, so what if you have mastered this strange sword technique? I have the golden silk armor to protect me, so I'm invincible. It's impossible for you to defeat me. Ji Tianxing remained silent. His face was gloomy as he manipulated the sword net to attack. Ji Ling had the golden threaded armor to protect her, which made him feel helpless. The flowing light sword net was practically useless. After all, he was only at the true energy realm, and his sword chi was not strong enough to break through the defense of the golden silk armor. If he were to reach Tongxian realm, the might of his sword chi would be increased by at least 10 times and he would be able to break through the defense of the golden silk armor. Thinking of this, his desire to improve his strength became even more urgent. Soon, half an hour had passed. Ji Tianxing had been controlling the flowing light sword net all this time. His true essence consumption was enormous, and his mind was also very tired. He could clearly feel that his mind and strength were rapidly depleting. He could at most last for 100 breaths of time before he was defeated by Ji Ling's sword. On the other hand, Ji Ling was still using her sword technique to block the sword net. There were only 2 wounds on her body that were neither light nor heavy. Even though the robe he was wearing had been shredded into a pile of rags by the flowing light sword net, he was still wearing the golden silk armor, so he wouldn't be in too much of a sorry state. Moreover, his true essence and physical strength were still abundant. Even if he fought for another 15 minutes, it wouldn't be a problem. Under such circumstances, Ji Tianxing could only withdraw the flowing light sword net. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Under his control, the flowing light sword net dissipated on the spot and turned back into 6 sword chi that flew back into his body. Ji Ling also temporarily stopped her attacks. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a mocking gaze and revealed a smug sneer. Why did you stop attacking? You know that you are weak and can't break through this king's defense? Or do you want to admit defeat and surrender? Ji Ling's tone was full of mockery and contempt. Ji Tianxing stared at her coldly and said word by word, You want me to admit defeat? Are you worthy? Ji Ling's expression became even colder, and her eyes surged with killing intent. If you admit defeat, then this king will be too disappointed. This king said that if you dare to challenge this king, then you must pay the price. This king will cripple you again and make you a cripple forever. Ji Ling's killing intent soared as he pounced at Ji Tianxing with his treasured sword. 9 flaming sword lights were unleashed as he used his trump card. Scarlet Flame 9 waves. 9 flaming sword lights burst forth with a violent and domineering power. They surged like a huge wave and instantly enveloped Ji Tianxing's figure. Ji Ling had been killed by the flowing light sword net for a quarter of an hour and had accumulated a lot of anger. At this moment, all of it exploded. This move of his was going to take Ji Tianxing's life on the spot. In an instant, the large stage was dazzled by the scarlet flames. Ji Tianxing's figure was completely engulfed by the flames and the people below the stage couldn't see him clearly. He was like a small boat in a stormy sea that was about to be swallowed up. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing's face was calm and composed. A cold light flashed in his eyes as his right hand instantly grabbed the black dragon sword's hilt. Clang. Ji Tianxing, who had never pulled out his sword since the start of the tournament, finally pulled it out for the first time. A sword hum that was like a dragon's roar resounded and instantly spread throughout the entire square. A dazzling and cold sword light suddenly bloomed like a bolt of lightning streaking across the sky. At this moment, Ji Tianxing's body was bursting with battle intent and killing intent that soared to the heavens. his body seemed to have become incomparably tall, causing everyone to look up at him and reveal a look of amazement. He ignored the 9 flaming sword lights around him and stared at Ji Ling in front of him. He held the black dragon sword with both hands and fiercely slashed down. Clang! An earth-shattering boom erupted, causing the entire arena to tremble. That incomparably domineering and cold sword light instantly destroyed a few flaming sword lights and slashed Ji Ling's chest. Chi! The golden silk armor that Ji Ling was wearing had been sliced in half by the sword light and was sent flying to either side. The violent impact brought about by the sword light sent him flying 6 meters away. With a plop sound, he fell onto the arena. He struggled to get up from the ground and stared angrily at Ji Tianxing, who was holding the black dragon sword, with a face full of shock. How is this possible? Shocked and angry, Ji Ling had only spoken halfway when blood gushed out of his throat and he spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. Although his golden silk armor had helped him block the sword that seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth, his internal organs had still suffered heavy injuries. Ji Tianxing stepped forward, pointed the black dragon sword at Ji Ling, and shouted angrily, "Don't admit defeat. Otherwise, I will be very disappointed." A moment ago, Ji Ling had said these words in an extremely arrogant manner. And now, he had returned those words back to Ji Ling. Ji Ling's face immediately turned ashen with anger and his entire body trembled. "You want this king to admit defeat? Dream on." He let out a furious roar and jumped up 20 feet from the ground. Holding the sword with both hands, he slashed down at Ji Tianxing's head. Ji Ling had already unleashed all his potential. This simple and crude move, splitting a mountain, could even split an elephant in half. Chapter 81. Many of the experts present could see that Ji Ling was fighting like a cornered beast, using all of his strength for the final attack. If Ji Tianxing was smart enough, he would retreat and dodge Ji Ling's attack. He only needed to delay for a while and he would be able to easily defeat Ji Ling. However, Ji Tianxing did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. Not only did he not retreat to dodge, he even charged forward again, slashing down with the black dragon sword. Retreating and dodging was a wise move, but he wanted to meet force with force and defeat Ji Ling in a tyrannical manner. He wanted to crush Ji Ling's confidence and arrogance in a crushing manner. Heaven-splitting sword. In that instant, Ji Tianxing's entire life strength erupted to the limit. Holding the black dragon sword with both hands, he slashed at Ji Ling with the power to split the heavens and earth. A deafening, sacred, and dignified dragon roar rang out, spreading throughout the entire plaza. The black dragon sword in Ji Tianxing's hand actually transformed into a 9-meter-long, bone-chilling black dragon phantom that slashed at Ji Ling with a loud bang. Bang! With a dull sound, the treasure sword in Ji Ling's hand was cut into 2 on the spot and sent flying. He was also sent flying 30 meters away by the black dragon phantom. He drew an arc in the air and smashed into the plaza below the stage with a plop. As he fell to the ground, dark red blood sprinkled down from the sky. It was especially ghastly under the scorching sun. Ji Ling smashed into the ground of the plaza and rolled several times before coming to a stop. He lay on the ground motionlessly. Clearly, he had already fainted. The surrounding onlookers were so frightened that they immediately retreated far away, letting out waves of screams and exclamations. The tens of thousands of spectators in the plaza had all personally witnessed the scene of the black dragon phantom sending Ji Ling flying with a single strike. Everyone was shocked until they were dumbstruck. Their faces were full of horror as they immediately roared in disgust. Heavens! What did I see just now? Was it a dragon? The legendary dragon? I saw it too. It was a huge black dragon. Too inconceivable. Ji Tianxing's sword actually slashed out a dragon phantom. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed that the 7th-level True Energy Stage young prince would be heavily injured by Ji Tianxing. The number 1 genius from back then is back. Ji Tianxing's strength is several times stronger than before. Although the little prince's aptitude and strength are already monstrous, I didn't expect that he would meet a monster like Ji Tianxing. For a moment, the tens of thousands of people in the square were boiling with excitement. Discussions rose and fell one after another, erupting like a mountain torrent, deafening the ears. Countless people looked at Ji Tianxing in horror, their eyes filled with fear and dread. Everyone knew that Ji Tianxing would definitely be the champion of this year's grand entrance competition. The nickname of trash that he carried previously was now a thing of the past. No one would ever mention it again in the future. Today, he was still the #1 genius of the Royal Azure dynasty. Not only that, he was even more talented and monstrous than before. The battle between him and the little prince, Ji Ling, would definitely spread throughout the Royal Azure dynasty and become a legend that everyone would know. Drawing his sword in anger, splitting the sky with a sword, and even the shadow of a black dragon appeared. What kind of legendary event was this? Although the tens of thousands of people in the square were boiling with excitement, they were discussing noisily. But Ji Tianxing, who was on the stage, was still calm and proud. He kept the black dragon sword and looked at the little princess below the stage with a smile on his face. That smile was full of confidence and gentleness. The little princess was so excited that she danced with joy. She was so emotional that her eyes were a little wet. The former brother Tianxing is finally back. After the previous bumpy training, he is now even more talented and in high spirits. I already knew that the person I love is not a fish in a pond. One day, he will become a dragon in the 9 heavens. After a long time, the boiling noise in the square slowly died down. Han Qiusheng went up the stage and looked at Ji Tianxing meaningfully before announcing loudly, "Ji Tianxing's challenge is successful. He is ranked first. Ji Ling and Jian Wusheng's rankings will drop by 1. In this way, Ji Tianxing was ranked first, Ji Ling was ranked second, and Jian Wusheng was ranked third." Ji Tianxing walked down the stage and returned to the little princess's side. The little princess didn't care about the difference between men and women. She excitedly pulled his hands and told him about her surprise and excitement. Then, Han Qiusheng announced that the competition would continue. However, the young martial artists were a little hesitant and did not dare to challenge him rashly. And no one dared to challenge Ji Tianxing, who was ranked first. For an entire quarter of an hour, not a single person went up the stage to challenge. So, Han Qiusheng asked again and again. After confirming that no one challenged him, he announced the final ranking in public. This year's competition is over. The following is the ranking of the new disciples. First place, Ji Tianxing. Second place, Ji Ling. Third place, Jian Wusheng. Fourth place. After announcing the rankings, Han Qiusheng took out 10 black cold iron tokens and gave them to the 10 martial artists. Congratulations on becoming a new disciple of our sect. Please keep your identity tokens. Please report to our sect with your identity tokens within a month. At that time, I will arrange your entry into our sect. After explaining the entry matters, Han Qiusheng announced the end of this year's competition. Ji Tianxing, the little princess, and the others kept their identity tokens and left contentedly. The tens of thousands of people in the square were still crowded around and discussing excitedly. They did not want to leave for a long time. On the high tower beside the square, Yun Yao and the other two were still standing at the top of the tower and looking down at the square. Hao Meng crossed his arms in front of his chest and revealed a playful smile. He clicked his tongue and said, "I didn't expect that senior brother Bai and I would make an error in judgment. Originally, with Ji Ling's strength, he would definitely be ranked first in the competition. I didn't expect that he would be defeated by Ji Tianxing. When we first met Ji Tianxing, he was only at the body refining stage. In just 1 month, he has grown to such an extent. How interesting. Especially that sword net secret technique he used and that dragon shadow just now. It's not simple." Hearing Hao Meng's praise for Ji Tianxing, Bai Wuchen's face darkened. He secretly glanced at Yun Yao. Seeing her thoughtful expression, he could not help but ask, "Eldest senior sister, when Ji Tianxing used his sword just now, the shadow of a black dragon appeared. Is it related to the dragon's breath that you detected that day?" Yun Yao remained silent and did not reply. Hao Meng scratched his head in confusion and turned to look at Bai Wuchen. "Senior brother Bai, what dragon's breath? When did eldest senior sister detect the dragon's breath?" Bai Wuchen just stared at Yun Yao and ignored Hao Meng's question. Hao Meng smiled embarrassedly and didn't say anything else after asking for a snub. After a while, Yun Yao put away her thoughtful expression and said indifferently, Junior brother Bai, junior brother Hao, go and meet up with the two deacons. See if there's anything else that needs to be done. We should return to the sect in 3 days. After saying that, Yun Yao turned around and left the top of the pagoda. Her figure quickly disappeared into the rows of buildings. Only Bai Wuchen and Hao Meng were left standing at the top of the pagoda. They looked at Yun Yao's departing figure and fell into deep thought. After a moment of silence, Hao Meng could not help but ask. Senior brother Bai, eldest senior sister seems a little strange. What is she going to do? Bai Wuchen frowned and said expressionlessly, Junior brother Hao, eldest senior sister has always been a loner. Her whereabouts are always mysterious. It's not your first day knowing her. But this time, eldest senior sister is most likely going to look for that G-brat. Chapter 82. Ji Tianxing rode the carriage and left the city square, heading back to the Ji mansion. The carriage passed through several streets, but it suddenly stopped when it entered a tree-lined path. Puzzled, he lifted the curtain and was about to ask the coachman what was going on when he looked up and saw a woman in a white dress standing in front of the carriage. Although he could only see the back of the woman in the white dress and her long black hair that reached her waist, he could still recognize her. However, he recognized that the woman in the white dress was Yun Yao just by looking at her slim back. Ji Tianxing hurriedly got out of the carriage and instructed the coachman, "Wait for me here. I'll be back soon." He walked behind Yun Yao and asked with a smile, "Miss Yun Yao, may I know why you're waiting for me here?" Yun Yao turned around and looked at him. She said calmly, "I have something to ask you, but this isn't the place to talk. Come with me." After that, Yun Yao led him away from the tree-lined path and entered a house not far away. The door of the house was tightly shut. The courtyard was old and dilapidated, and it was covered with weeds. It was obvious that no one lived here. The courtyard was silent. The two of them were not afraid of being disturbed or eavesdropped when they talked here. The two of them stood under a big tree in the courtyard. Yun Yao then said to Ji Tianxing, "Congratulations on winning first place in the tournament. You will be my junior martial brother when you enter our sect." Ji Tianxing smiled faintly and cupped his hands towards her. "Then I'll thank senior sister here. In the future, I'll have to ask senior sister to guide me." Of course, he was just being polite on the surface. He didn't take it seriously. He understood that if he wanted to have powerful strength and a noble status, he could only rely on his own hard work and hard work. Moreover, he knew very well that Yun Yao didn't stop him halfway to congratulate him for winning first place in the tournament. She must have something else to say. As expected, Yun Yao looked at the black dragon sword in his hand. After pondering for a moment, she asked, "Junior brother, can you let me have a look at your sword?" Ji Tianxing's expression did not change, but his heart was secretly vigilant. No wonder she wanted to stop me halfway, so she was interested in my black dragon sword. Could it be that she saw through the secret of the black dragon sword? Thinking of this, he quickly smiled at Yun Yao and declined, "Senior sister Yun Yao, as the #1 genius of the Tianshan region, you are naturally knowledgeable and have seen all kinds of divine weapons. This sword of mine is just an ordinary sword. It can't even enter senior sister's eyes. How about this? My G clan makes a living by forging weapons. I'll go back to the mansion and get 2 swords for senior sister to look at." Before he could finish, Yun Yao calmly rejected him. No need. Of course, she could see that Ji Tianxing did not want her to look at the black dragon sword and wanted to deliberately change the topic. However, she would not force Ji Tianxing and said with a calm expression, "Since junior brother is unwilling to part with it, then let's forget about it. In addition, I will be returning to the sect in 3 days. It will take at least half a month to reach the sect from the Qingyun kingdom. If you want to arrive earlier, you might as well travel with me. If it was an ordinary person, it would take at least half a month to reach the Sky Pillar sect." However, Yun Yao could fly thousands of miles in a day on the spirit crane and return to the sect in 3 days. If he could ride the spirit crane with this peerless beauty to the Sky Pillar sect, How pleasant and enviable would that be? If it was anyone else, they would not refuse such good fortune. However, Ji Tianxing shook his head and explained, "Thank you for your kindness, senior sister, but I still have some matters to deal with at home. I will be delayed for a few days, so I won't be traveling with senior sister." Yun Yao nodded slightly. "All right, then you deal with your family matters first. After dealing with the mundane matters, set off as soon as possible. Don't miss the deadline." "Thank you for your reminder, senior sister. Then I will take my leave." Ji Tianxing still maintained a smile, cupped his hands to her, and then left the dilapidated house. Yun Yao looked at his back as he left, and the corners of her mouth suddenly evoked a very faint smile. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. "The more you try to hide it, the more certain I am," she murmured to herself before leaving the dilapidated house. Ling Mansion, in a small courtyard with a quiet environment. Madame Ling was sitting under a tree, looking at things and thinking of her daughter, Ling Yunfei's death. She kept wiping her tears. Ling Sihai sat beside her and comforted her in a low voice. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps came from the entrance of the small courtyard. A guard rushed into the small courtyard and shouted anxiously, "Family head! Something bad has happened." Ling Sihai immediately turned his head and angrily glared at the guard. He shouted, "What's the matter? Why are you so panicked?" The guard quickly came to his side and respectfully reporting to Master, "This subordinate just received news that the sky-bearing sect's entrance competition has ended." Damn that Ji Tianxing, he actually defeated the little prince Ji Ling and entered the sky-bearing sect as first place in the competition. Suddenly hearing this news, Madame Ling also stopped sobbing. She stared in shock and anger and shouted, "What? That's impossible! That damn little bastard, how could he enter the sky-bearing sect and even win first place in the competition?" Ling Sihai also had an angry look on his face. He asked the guard in a deep voice, "Is this true?" The guard quickly nodded and said, "Of course it's true. The competition was held in the city square, and tens of thousands of people saw it clearly. Now the news has already spread in the imperial city." Ling Sihai also knew that this matter couldn't be fake. He was so angry that his face turned ashen, and his fists cracked. Ji Tianxing, that little bastard. He entered the sky-bearing sect as first place in the competition, so he will definitely be heavily nurtured by the sky-bearing sect. Now that he has the identity of a disciple of the sky-bearing sect, it will be difficult for us to make a move on him. Madame Ling was also so angry that her face turned cold, and her eyes surged with an ominous glint. Even if Ji Tianxing becomes a disciple of the sky-bearing sect, we can't let him go. No matter what, I will kill him and let him be buried with our daughter. She frowned and thought for a while. Suddenly, she thought of someone and had an idea. "Master, I have an idea. We can ask you for help and let him deal with Ji Tianxing." "Humph! Ji Tianxing, that little bastard, does he think that he can save his dog life by entering the sky-bearing sect? Wishful thinking." Ling Sihai frowned in puzzlement and subconsciously asked, "Which you?" Madame Ling quickly explained, "Which you can it be? Of course it's Feifei's cousin, Jianyu." "Jianyu?" Ling Sihai was startled for a moment before suddenly coming to a realization. "That's right. How could I have forgotten about him? Jianyu is also a martial arts genius. He entered the sky-bearing sect 3 years ago. Now, his position in the sect must be extraordinary. Madam, I will write a letter to you now. I must deliver the letter to you before Ji Tianxing arrives at the sky-bearing sect." Chapter 83. On the way back to the Ji mansion, Ji Tianxing was delayed by Yun Yao. By the time he returned to the Ji mansion, it was already noon. At this time, the news of him defeating the young prince Ji Ling and winning first place had already spread throughout the imperial city. Everyone in the Ji mansion had also heard the news. Countless people were overjoyed and very excited. When Ji Tianxing stepped into the Ji mansion, the steward had already brought many Ji family members to respectfully wait for him. Seeing that the Ji family members were in high spirits, he casually said a few words and dismissed them. After returning to the Cool Breeze courtyard, he immediately sent a letter to the Vice Hall Master, Mu Shan, to discuss matters. The entrance competition was over, and he had successfully won first place, becoming famous in one fell swoop. Now, it was time to resolve the Ji family's internal problems. A moment later, Mu Shan rushed into the courtyard like the wind and saluted him. "Greetings, young master." Ji Tianxing waved his hand, indicating for him to be less courteous. With a grave expression, he asked, "Mu Shan, is second elder in the mansion?" Mu Shan hurriedly reporting to young master, "Just a quarter of an hour ago, second elder and Ji Hao secretly escaped from the imperial city. However, this subordinate has been following young master's orders and has been secretly following them." Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. "It's just as I expected. I had long expected that Ji Ruffing and his son would escape. Now that I am the family head, I hold the power of the Ji family, I have won first place in the competition, and I have become a disciple of the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Ruffing can no longer do anything to me. I was just about to give the order to capture him and punish his crimes in public, but he fled in fear of punishment." Mu Shan hurriedly took out a stack of papers and a small jade bottle from his sleeve and handed them to Ji Tianxing. "Young master, these are some criminal evidence that I found in the secret compartment of Second Elder's secret chamber. Please take a look." Ji Tianxing took the papers and jade bottle and carefully examined them. Those few slips of paper were the secret letters between Ji Ruffing and the young prince, Ji Ling, as well as the receipts for the secret weapon transactions. In the small jade bottle, there was still half a bottle of medicinal powder that had not been used up. It was the supplementary medicine for the energy-destroying powder. Ji Tianxing had long suspected that someone from the Ji clan had secretly poisoned his father, Ji Changkong. That was why his father was poisoned on the day the Ling clan came knocking on their door. Now that he saw this half bottle of medicinal powder, he finally confirmed that the person who poisoned him was second uncle, Ji Ruffing. The evidence is conclusive. "Ji Ruffing, I'll make you pay with your blood this time." Ji Tianxing's face was filled with rage as he bellowed. He immediately ordered, "Mu Shan, leave a few experts behind to keep an eye on the managers in the mansion. Don't let them escape. Gather the men immediately. I will personally lead a team to hunt down Ji Ruffing. We absolutely cannot let him escape. Understood?" Mu Shan cupped his fists and accepted the order. He immediately left the room to gather the experts of Shadow Sword Hall. Ji Tianxing also hurriedly left the Cool Breeze courtyard. He found a chasing windhorse and prepared to set off. Currently, his father was heavily injured and was in seclusion. He would soon be heading to the Sky Pillar sect. The Ji clan would have no one to oversee the situation. If Ji Ruffing made a comeback, no one in the Ji clan would be able to stop him. Therefore, Ji Tianxing had already made up his mind to eliminate Ji Ruffing no matter what. If this internal trouble was not eliminated, the Ji clan would never have a day of peace. A moment later, Ji Tianxing led Mu Shan and the 6 experts of Shadow Sword Hall out of the Ji mansion. The group left the imperial city and chased westward as fast as lightning. Every 2 hours, Mu Shan would receive a secret message from his subordinates using swift wind birds to learn about Ji Ruffing's whereabouts and news. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. The sun had already set and the curtain of night was about to fall. At this time, Ji Tianxing, Mu Shan, and the others had already chased for more than 300 miles. They were far away from the imperial city and had entered Yuzhou. Obviously, Ji Ruffing had also discovered that someone was chasing after him. Not only did he run for his life without stopping, but he also fled into the mountains in order to shake off his pursuers. 2 hours later, Ji Tianxing, Mu Shan, and the others finally caught up to Ji Ruffing. In the darkness of the night, on top of a 1,000-zhang-tall mountain, Ji Ruffing, Ji Hao, and 4 other guards in leather armor were standing in the open space with their backs against each other in a defensive formation. The horses that the 6 of them rode had long been abandoned at the foot of the mountain. Ji Ruffing's appearance was somewhat disheveled. His clothes were soaked in sweat and his eyes were glaring angrily, flashing with a frightening light. Like the four bodyguards, he gripped his profound weapon saber and sword tightly and stared murderously at the Shadow Sword Hall experts around him. Ji Hao's face was ashen. He hid in the crowd with a frightened look in his eyes, trembling all over. 8 Shadow Sword Hall experts spread out and surrounded them, approaching step by step. Ji Tianxing strode into the field with Mu Shan and stopped 10 meters away from Ji Ruffing. He looked coldly at Ji Ruffing and shouted in a low voice, "Ji Ruffing, you're guilty of so many crimes. Do you still think you can escape?" Ji Ruffing stared at Ji Tianxing with a gloomy face. He pretended to be angry and shouted, "Ji Tianxing, I only went to Yuzhou to take care of family business. Why did you send people to kill me?" Seeing his reaction, Ji Tianxing immediately sneered and said, "Ji Ruffing, you're about to die and you still want to play dumb? You sent assassins to assassinate me. According to the Ji family's rules, assassinating the family head's legitimate son is a capital offense. You wantonly destroyed the Ji family's foundation and secretly traded large amounts of profound weapon equipment with the young prince. This is also a capital offense. Also, you colluded with the Ling family and secretly poisoned the family head. You murdered the family head. This is also a capital offense. Ji Ruffing, you've committed 3 major crimes. No matter which one, I can kill you on the spot." Ji Ruffing's expression changed drastically. Deep hatred flashed through his eyes. However, he still refused to admit his crimes. He even quibbled, "Ji Tianxing, this is only your side of the story. You want to punish me? Do you have any evidence?" "Without any evidence, on what basis did you send people from Shadow Sword Hall to kill me? You want evidence?" Ji Tianxing sneered. He waved his hand and threw a stack of paper and a jade bottle in front of Ji Ruffing. "This is the evidence. Open your dog eyes and look carefully." When Ji Ruffing saw the stack of paper and jade bottle, he didn't need to read the contents to know that he had been completely exposed. His expression became ferocious as he shouted in a venomous tone, "Ji Tianxing, I underestimated you. Originally, today was supposed to be the day of your death. But I didn't expect that a piece of trash like you could rise again and defeat the young prince to take first place in the family competition. I really regret not killing you earlier. If you hadn't interfered, my plan would have been completed long ago. I would have taken back the family head position that should have belonged to me." Ji Tianxing's expression was cold as he shouted, "Ji Ruffing, all these years, even though you've run amok and wantonly embezzled the Ji family's assets, my father still didn't do anything to you out of brotherly affection. My father treated you like a brother, but you repaid his kindness with enmity. Not only did you plot to usurp the family head position, but you also wanted to kill us father and son. You've committed a heinous crime. Death is not to be regretted. Tonight, I will clean house for the Ji family." Chapter 84. Hearing Ji Tianxing's words, Ji Ruffing laughed maniacally. He roared like a madman, "Bullshit? How am I inferior to your father? I'm the second son, and the position of patriarch should be mine. Why should I pass it to your father? It's your father, Ji Changkeng, who took away everything that belonged to me. He's the one who deserves to die." Ji Tianxing frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Ji Ruffing, you've lost your mind and your mind. Cut the crap. Take your head and accept your punishment." With that, he waved his hand and ordered Mu Shan, "Do it." Mu Shan accepted the order and leaped toward Ji Ruffing. He waved his sword and cold light filled the sky. The 8 Shadow Sword Hall experts also attacked, surrounding Ji Ruffing's 4 guards. Instantly, sword light flashed within a 20-meter radius, and a fierce wind blew. The sword light brought with it a violent and fierce wind that spread in all directions, sweeping up the fallen leaves on the ground and sending sand and stones flying. The dazzling cold light illuminated the dark night. Ding ding dang dang, after a series of clanging sounds of swords colliding, the battle ended. Although Ji Ruffing's 4 trusted guards were at the first or second level of the mystic enlightening realm, they could not withstand the attacks of the Shadow Sword Hall experts. Both sides had only exchanged a few blows before the 4 guards were killed by the Shadow Sword Hall experts. They lay on the ground covered in blood, turning into corpses. Ji Hao was even more vulnerable. His chest had been pierced by a sword light in the chaotic battle, and he died on the spot. Ji Ruffing was still alive, but he was also covered in wounds. The sword in his hand had been snatched away, and Mu Shan had a sword pressed against his neck. Ji Tianxing walked in front of him and shouted with a gloomy face, "Ji Ruffing, you can say your last words now." Ji Ruffing's blood-stained face revealed a sinister smile filled with resentment. "Ha, Ji Tianxing. Even if I die here tonight, you and your father won't live for long. You'll be buried with me sooner or later. I'll wait for you in the Yellow Springs. Someone will avenge me." "Ha." With that, Ji Ruffing laughed maniacally. "Then go to hell." Ji Tianxing coldly shouted, waving his sword and piercing his throat. Ji Ruffing immediately stopped breathing. His eyes were still wide open as his body fell to the ground with a plop. The mountain peak fell into silence. The night wind blew, dispersing the smell of blood on the ground. "Deal with these corpses," Ji Tianxing ordered Mu Shan before walking towards Ji Hao's corpse. Ever since he caught up with Ji Ruffing and his son, Ji Hao had been trembling in fear. He hadn't said a single word, which seemed somewhat abnormal. He had specially observed Ji Hao just now and realized that Ji Hao's build and height were somewhat different from what he remembered. Ji Tianxing could not help but suspect that there was something wrong with this Ji Hao. He came to the side of Ji Hao's corpse and used his sword to pry open the hair covering his face, carefully observing Ji Hao's face. After a while, Ji Tianxing suddenly noticed something and frowned. "Mu Shan, check Ji Hao's body and see if he was in disguise." Mu Shan immediately understood what he meant and hurriedly squatted down to examine Ji Hao's face. He stretched out 2 fingers and searched Ji Hao's face for a while before ripping off a human skin mask. Instantly, a dark and ordinary face appeared in front of everyone. Ji Tianxing looked at the unfamiliar face with a cold glint in his eyes. He said hatefully, "It really is a substitute. Damn that Ji Ruffing, what a scheming old fox. He had already found someone to disguise himself as Ji Hao and fooled us all." Mu Shan knelt down on one knee in shame and apologized to Ji Tianxing. "Young master, it is my negligence. I was careless and was fooled by a substitute, allowing Ji Hao to escape. Young master, please allow me to redeem myself. I will immediately send people to investigate. We must capture Ji Hao." Ji Tianxing thought for a while and nodded. "This matter cannot be delayed. Send people to investigate immediately. Remember, capture him alive." "Yes, young master." Mu Shan cupped his fists and immediately ordered the experts of the Shadow Sword Hall to start the operation. After he passed down the order and arranged the men, the corpses on the mountain peak were also dealt with. Ji Tianxing led everyone away from the mountain peak and returned to the imperial city. The next day, noon, the Ji Mansion's main hall. Ji Tianxing sat on the seat of the patriarch. Today, he was going to clean up the internal problems and reorganize the Ji family. Mu Shan stood beside him with a sword in his hand, looking like a murderous god. On both sides of the main hall sat Grand Elder Ji Dajiang, for managers with different surnames, and a few elders and elders of the Ji family. Third Elder Ji Changhe and 5 other managers with the surname Ji were forced to kneel in the middle of the main hall by the experts of the Shadow Sword Hall. Ji Tianxing took out all kinds of evidence and listed the crimes of the 5 managers with the surname Ji. Then he announced the punishment in front of everyone. Remove the 5 managers with the surname Ji from their positions and confiscate all their family assets. Then, all 5 of them will be expelled from the Ji family and their names will be erased from the genealogy. From now on, these 5 people would no longer be the powerful managers of the Ji family. They would be reduced to penniless paupers. Moreover, they would be expelled from the Ji family and their names would be erased from the genealogy. Even after death, they would not be able to enter the Ji family's ancestral hall. To them, this was undoubtedly the most reasonable punishment. Ji Tianxing's announcement was like a bolt from the blue to the 5 managers with the surname Ji. They were dumbfounded on the spot. After regaining their senses, the 5 managers beat their chests and stamped their feet. They repeatedly kowtowed and begged Ji Tianxing to be lenient and forgive them. There were even 2 managers who wailed in front of everyone and slapped themselves in front of Ji Tianxing to express their remorse. However, what happened in the main hall a few days ago was still vivid in his mind. How could Ji Tianxing forgive them? At that time, these 5 managers had helped Ji Tianxing seize power and put pressure on Ji Tianxing. How repulsive were their faces! Now that things had progressed to this point, even if they wept bitterly and begged for mercy and repented, Ji Tianxing would not be merciful. After dealing with the 5 managers with the surname Ji Tianxing dealt with the 3rd uncle, Ji Changhe. 3rd elder Ji Changhe colluded with 2nd elder Ji Ruffing to embezzle the Ji family's assets and fill their own pockets. They committed all kinds of evil deeds. Ji Changhe, since you are my father's biological brother, I will give you a lighter punishment. From today onwards, Ji Changhe will be stripped of all his positions and will not interfere in any of the Ji family's matters. Furthermore, Ji Changhe will be imprisoned in the long bamboo courtyard. He will not be able to take a step out of the courtyard for the rest of his life. If Ji Changhe violates the above punishment in the slightest, he will be executed on the spot. After announcing the punishment, Ji Tianxing stared coldly at Ji Changhe and asked, Ji Changhe, do you have anything else to say? The current Ji Changhe did not have the arrogant and complacent attitude he had a few days ago. His hair was disheveled and he cut a sorry figure. His empty eyes were filled with despair and anger. He raised his head to look at Ji Tianxing and sneered with a sinister expression. Ji Tianxing, the winner is king and the loser is a bandit. I have nothing to say. I just didn't think that 2nd brother and I would have underestimated you. You are only a 17-year-old youth, but your methods are more decisive and ruthless than your father's. Chapter 85. After dealing with Ji Changhe and the 5 Ji clan heads, the internal strife of the Ji clan was finally completely eliminated. Ji Tianxing had avenged himself and his father, and also completed his father's task of protecting the Ji clan's 100 years of foundation. Of course, the removal of the 2 elders and the 5 clan heads would temporarily affect the Ji clan's businesses and properties. Ji Tianxing did not have many people under his command, only the Shadow Sword Hall and the 4 clan heads with different surnames. He had no choice but to carry out his duties as the clan head, working hard every day for the Ji clan's businesses and properties, formulating various plans, and finding ways to restore the Ji clan's businesses. Unknowingly, 3 days had passed. In these 3 days, he was unusually busy. In order to quell the aftermath of the Ji clan's internal strife, it could be said that he was mentally and physically exhausted. Fortunately, the Ji clan's properties covered more than half of the imperial Qing dynasty, and there were many capable people under his command. He promoted a few trustworthy new clan heads, and formulated several plans and rules based on the Ji clan's current situation, and finally stabilized the Ji clan's turbulent situation. According to his estimation, the Ji clan would return to normal in at most a month, and would be as prosperous as before. Early in the morning, Ji Tianxing woke up and was washing up when Han Er's voice came from outside his room. Eldest young master, Master has just finished his closed-door training, and he wants you to see him. And I'll go now. Ji Tianxing responded and quickly walked out of Qingfeng Courtyard, heading towards his father's residence. When he arrived at Sanchong Courtyard, Ji Tianxing just entered the room and saw his father sitting by the bed, talking to Mu Shan in a low voice. Seeing him enter the room, Ji Changkong immediately revealed a gratified smile and waved to him. Tianxing, come over quickly. Seeing that his father's complexion had recovered, Ji Tianxing felt a little comforted. He quickly went forward and bowed, asking with concern, Father, you've been in closed-door training for a few days. How are your injuries? Ji Changkong nodded slightly and said in a calm tone, the poison of the energy-destroying powder has been mostly removed. Father's injuries have stabilized, and there are no major problems for the time being. Only then did Ji Tianxing feel relieved. He smiled and said, Father, many things have happened in the manor while you were recuperating in seclusion. Let me tell you slowly. Ji Changkong shook his head and said with a smile, Tianxing, Mu Shan has told me everything that has happened in the past few days. I really didn't expect that you would actually recover your strength, pass the test of the family's forbidden area, and succeed as the family's patriarch. He even passed the Sky Pillar sex competition and won first place. That's great. I already knew that you wouldn't disappoint me. You would protect the Ji family's 100 years of foundation and rise again, becoming famous throughout the world. Speaking up to this point, Ji Changkong's emotions were somewhat agitated. His heart was filled with deep shock. Ji Tianxing being able to pass the test of the family's forbidden area had already surprised him. When he entered the family's forbidden area, he was at the 6th stage of the Tongxian realm, but he was still beaten black and blue by the black dragon. He only managed to obtain the blue crystal after a close shave with death. Not only did Ji Tianxing pass the test, but he also wiped away his shame in the Sky Pillar sex entrance competition and won first place, becoming famous throughout the Imperial Azure dynasty. As a father, how could he not feel proud of his son? In addition, Ji Tianxing was able to control the huge Ji family at the age of 17. He even used thunderous methods to eliminate the Ji family's internal problems. This made Ji Changkong feel even more incredulous. Seeing his father's emotions and amazement, Ji Tianxing smiled and said with concern, "Father, although there are some unavoidable disturbances in the family's property and business after I eliminated the internal problems, I have already made arrangements. The current situation has already stabilized. At most, it will take 2 months for us to recover. Father, you are the pillar of the Ji family. During this time, you should focus on recuperating. You must recover your injuries and strength as soon as possible." Ji Changkong waved his hand and said with a smile, "Tianxing, you don't have to worry about me. I know the extent of my injuries. I know that you are wholeheartedly pursuing the peak of martial arts. Your lifelong goal is to enter the Sky Pillar sect to cultivate. You don't have to worry about the future. You can go to the Sky Pillar sect to cultivate at ease. I will take care of the family's mundane matters. You don't have to worry about these trivial matters." Ji Tianxing was still worried and asked worriedly, "Father, your injuries haven't healed yet. What if the Ling family makes a comeback and retaliates?" Ji Changkong pointed at Mu Shan beside him and said with a smile, "Just now, I had Mu Shan pass down the order to recall 16 Shadow Sword Hall experts to guard the Ji residence. With Mu Shan and the 16 Shadow Sword Hall experts, the Ji residence will be safe. The Ling family won't dare to make a move against me." Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and nodded, "That's good. Then I will go back and prepare. We will leave for the Sky Pillar sect in 5 days." With this matter settled, the father and son chatted for a while more before Ji Tianxing took his leave. Half an hour later, Ji Tianxing returned to the cool breeze courtyard. Just as he walked to the door, he heard 2 voices coming from inside the room. They were talking in low voices. "Old Ji is really not a good friend. He's been busy with the Ji family's matters these past few days and hasn't made anything good for me. I have to steal food personally to eat." The one who spoke was naturally the little ice fox, Qian Yu. Yes. "Little fox, you are still the smart one. A few days ago, I helped old Ji fight and used up a lot of energy. My body is in a terrible state. I need to eat more to replenish my body." Ji Tianxing was very familiar with this voice. It was the little black dragon's voice. "Hey, little black dragon, don't eat so fast. Leave some for me. Damn it. That roasted chicken is mine. Give it back to me." Qian Yu's voice sounded again. It was unclear that she still had food in her mouth. Ji Tianxing frowned and immediately pushed open the door. He saw that the round table in the room was filled with all kinds of delicious food. There were all kinds of fresh fruits and delicious dishes, as well as roasted chicken, roasted duck, and roasted lamb legs. The food was piled up like a small mountain. Qian Yu and the little black dragon's claws were holding onto the food. They were eating heartily, grease dripping from their mouths. When Ji Tianxing walked into the room, Qian Yu was reaching out with its little claws, trying to snatch a golden roasted chicken from the little black dragon's hands. The 2 of them heard the door open and stopped at the same time. They turned their heads to look at the door. Ji Tianxing looked at the 2 of them with a strange expression. He pretended to be angry and said, "Wow, the 2 of you are stealing food behind my back." The little black dragon hurriedly swallowed half of the chicken leg in its mouth. Then, with a whoosh, it turned back into the black dragon sword and wormed its way into the scabbard hanging on the wall. Qian Yu hurriedly wiped the grease from its little mouth and smiled. "Old G, don't be angry. I didn't mean to steal food." It rolled its eyes and pointed its little claws at the black dragon sword hanging on the wall. It said righteously, "It was the little black dragon who wanted to eat and instigated me to steal food from the kitchen. It has been complaining to me for the past few days. It said that it used up a lot of energy to help you fight in the arena that day. It even hurt its waist and needed to eat to replenish its energy." The black dragon sword hanging on the wall swung twice. The little black dragon's sullen voice sounded. "It wasn't me. It has nothing to do with me. Little Fox, it was Hungry Fox who complained first." Hungry Fox complained first? Ji Tianxing was amused by the little black dragon's words. This sentence is concise and comprehensive, and it's accurate. He. Chapter 86. Seeing that Qian Yu still wanted to argue, Ji Tianxing waved his hand. "All right, stop arguing. Eat as much as you want. If it's not enough, I'll get the kitchen to send more. I'm preparing to go into seclusion to cultivate for a few days. During this time, you two should behave yourselves. We'll be going to the Sky Pillar sect in a few days." After Qian Yu and the little black dragon finished eating, Ji Tianxing prepared to enter seclusion. But at this moment, Huan'er's voice came from outside the door. "Eldest young master, the little princess is here. Quickly come out and take a look." Huan'er's tone was a bit strange, causing Ji Tianxing to frown. He was somewhat puzzled. He hurriedly had Qian Yu return to the 100 treasures brocade pouch before opening the door and walking into the small courtyard. Huan'er was standing at the entrance of the small courtyard, respectfully welcoming the little princess. At the entrance of the courtyard, a delicate and cute figure wearing a light yellow dress entered Ji Tianxing's eyes. "Big brother Tianxing, I'm here." Ji Ku entered the courtyard with a smile as beautiful as a flower. Her footsteps were light and nimble, and it was clear that she was in an extremely good mood. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. He was about to step forward to welcome Ji Ku. However, when he saw a large group of guards following closely behind Ji Ku and carrying several boxes, the smile on his face immediately turned into confusion. "Ku, what are you doing now?" Ji Ku came to his side with a face full of joy. She intimately held his arm and directed the palace guards to carry the boxes into the room. "Big brother Tianxing, don't misunderstand. I'm not here to give you gifts this time. These boxes are all my luggage. I've decided to stay with you for a few days." Ji Tianxing's expression became a bit strange. "Ku, this isn't good, is it? You're an unmarried princess, and you're coming to stay with me. If the news gets out, there will definitely be a lot of rumors." Ji Ku's face was full of smiles. Clearly, she didn't care about the negative effects. After the guards put down the boxes, she ordered them to leave the small courtyard. She pulled Ji Tianxing into the room. After sitting down, she smiled and said, "Big brother Tianxing, we'll be going to the Sky-bearing sect in a few days anyway. I'm bored staying in the palace for the next few days, so I'll stay here for a few days. It'll be convenient for us to set off together." "What's wrong? Big brother Tianxing, are you unwilling? Am I too abrupt and presumptuous? If Big brother Tianxing finds me annoying, then I'll just move out." As she spoke, she pouted. Her beautiful face revealed a wronged expression, and a layer of mist appeared in her clear eyes. Ji Tianxing quickly smiled and pinched her cute little face. He comforted her and said, "Ku, you misunderstood me. Why would I find you annoying? You're right. You can stay here for the time being. In a few days, we'll head to the Sky-bearing sect together." Only then did the wronged expression on Ji Ku's face disappear and she revealed a sweet smile. "And I knew it. Big brother Tianxing is the best." Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. Then he had Huan'er tidy up a room for Ji Ku and prepare a place to stay. Only the two of them were left in the room. Ji Ku leaned over to Ji Tianxing's ear and whispered, "Big brother Tianxing, I have something to tell you. This morning, people from the Sky-bearing sect brought my imperial uncle out of the imperial city and set off for the Sky-bearing sect." Hearing this news, Ji Tianxing immediately frowned. "Little Prince Jiling? He actually went with the people from the sky-bearing sect to the sky-bearing sect? Ji-Ku nodded. Her clear eyes were also filled with doubt. That's right. I also don't understand why. It's reasonable to say that you, the first place of the tournament, should be valued by the sky-bearing sect. They should be bringing you along. Ji Tianxing remained silent. His eyes were surging with thoughts. He kept feeling that something was wrong. After a moment of silence, Ji-Ku suddenly thought of something. Her expression couldn't help but change slightly. She lowered her voice and said, "That's right, Big Brother Tianxing, I remembered something. Previously, I inadvertently heard that the 3 disciples from the sky-bearing sect came to our Imperial Azure Dynasty not only to supervise the tournament, but also to complete a mission. They seem to be looking for someone, and my Imperial uncle is the person they're looking for. Big Brother Tianxing, do you think it's because of this?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, "It should be. But why is Ji Ling the person they're looking for?" Ji-Ku frowned and shook her head. "I also don't understand why. Perhaps when we reach the sky-bearing sect, we'll know what's going on." Following that, Ji-Ku chatted with him for a while more before preparing to return to her room to rest. Ji Tianxing hurriedly urged, "Cuckoo, I'm preparing to go into seclusion to cultivate for a few days. We'll set off in 5 days. It'll take at least half a month from the Imperial Azure Dynasty to the sky-bearing sect. The journey is long and bumpy. You should rest well these few days." Ji-Ku nodded obediently to show that she understood. She bid farewell to him and returned to her room. Ji Tianxing also entered the secret underground chamber. He took out many pills and swallowed them before he began to cultivate. 2 days ago, he took the time to go to the martial arts hall and tested his strength again. Now, he already had the strength of the 5th level of the true element realm. Moreover, the sword embryo in his body was growing stronger day by day. His strength was still rapidly increasing. Ji Tianxing considered and prepared to cultivate the 3rd level of the sword heart Dao. He wanted to refine the 9 main meridians in his body into a sword vein. Although his meridians had been transformed by the red star flower's medicinal power, his meridians were much tougher and stronger than ordinary people. However, this was far from enough. It was difficult to support the powerful sword qi and the circulation of his true essence. Only by refining the 9 main meridians into a sword vein could he circulate his true essence more smoothly and control the sword qi more freely. In the dark secret chamber, Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged in the essence-gathering array. His hands formed the sword-controlling art as he began to cultivate. The medicinal pills that he had just consumed were also catalyzed by his true essence and emitted a majestic medicinal power. The medicinal power flowed endlessly in his meridians, strengthening his true essence and sword embryo. He circulated his qi and cultivated for 9 cycles, and a day had passed. A day of bitter cultivation had increased his strength by a few notches. The sword embryo had also grown significantly. He was about to consume another medicinal pill to cultivate when his body suddenly stiffened. His consciousness was sucked into the mysterious black hole in his dantian and into Kenshin's tomb. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing's consciousness entered a cold and dark space. He looked around and realized that he was no longer in the vast wilderness. Instead, he was under the indomitable pitch-black sword steel. The ancient sword steel that was tens of thousands of feet tall was as majestic as before. It emitted a majestic aura that could suppress heaven and earth. The 4 blood-red words on the sword steel emitted a domineering and sharp sword essence that seemed to be able to tear the sky apart. Ji Tianxing immediately understood that the sword soul, the burial of heaven, must have pulled his consciousness into Kenshin's tomb and brought him here. Chapter 87. Ji Tianxing looked up at the ancient sword steel and asked calmly, "Senior Burial of Heaven, did you summon me here?" Burial of Heaven's voice immediately sounded from the ancient sword steel. It was still as powerful and distant as usual. "Yes." Ji Tianxing nodded and asked again, "Senior Burial of Heaven, may I ask why you summoned me here?" Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, "Boy, although you can cultivate the path of the sword heart and have reached the beginner level, you are still a human being. Your innate talent is limited, and you are destined to only be able to reach the 3rd level of the path of the sword heart. You will never be able to reach the 4th level. Although your comprehension is passable and your heart is firm enough, you do not have a strong enough constitution and bloodline. You are destined to not achieve much. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing could not help but frown and ask, Senior Burial of Heaven, did you summon me here to persuade me to give up on cultivating the path of the sword heart? Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment before saying, although you are very weak and have a low aptitude, from what I know about you, you are determined and persistent. You will definitely not give up on cultivating the path of the sword heart. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a firm tone, that's right. Cultivating the path of the sword heart is the only way for me to become stronger. I will never give up. After a pause, he looked at the sword steel with shining eyes and asked, Senior Burial of Heaven, since you have pointed out my flaws, you are willing to tell me these secrets? You must have a way to solve my innate talent, right? Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, yes, you are very smart. Since you have successfully cultivated the path of the sword heart with a human body, you can be considered to have some connection with Kenshin. I can help you solve your innate talent flaw. Kenshin once stepped into the Tianxin domain and left an opportunity in the Star Ancient Realm. That's a drop of Kenshin's divine blood sealed within the heavenly astral bead. If you can find the heavenly star bead and obtain that drop of divine blood, you'll be able to fuse with the Kenshin bloodline and solve the flaw of your innate talent. You'll also be able to successfully cultivate the supreme sword Tao of Kenshin. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing's eyes shone brightly, his heart filled with anticipation and desire. Ancient Star Realm? Divine Blood? Heavenly Star Bead? Thank you, Senior Burial of Heaven. I'll remember this. He knew very well that the supreme sword Tao that the sword Soul Burial of Heaven mentioned was not only the sword Heart Tao, but also a higher-level sword Tao absolute art. If he could obtain the god's blood in the heavenly star bead, not only would he be able to make up for his innate flaws, but he would also be able to cultivate a more profound sword Tao. How could he not be excited? How could his blood not boil? However, Ji Tianxing quickly calmed down as his heart was filled with worry. The ancient star realm is the most mysterious and peculiar ancient realm in the Tianxin region. Legend has it that it's a cultivation holy land created by an ancient almighty. It's like a small world. The Sky Pillar sect and the 7 top sects of the Tianxin region are all located in the ancient star realm, and they each occupy a spirit vein treasure land. With my current strength, searching for the heavenly star bead in the ancient star realm is undoubtedly like searching for a needle in a haystack. I'm afraid I won't be able to find it in my lifetime, right? The sword Soul Burial of Heaven told me this news. Although it's exciting, it's just an illusion. It can only be a fantasy. At this moment, the sword Soul Burial of Heaven spoke again. Kid, aren't you going to the Sky Pillar sect in a few days? The Sky Pillar sect is in the ancient star realm. After you settle down in the Sky Pillar sect, do your best to find the heavenly star bead. If you want to master Kenshin's supreme sword Tao and become a supreme expert like Kenshin, you only have one path to take. Ji Tianxing frowned and asked doubtfully, Senior Burial of Heaven, how do you know that I'm going to the Sky Pillar sect in a few days? The sword Soul Burial of Heaven let out a low chuckle. Hee, I'm in your body. I know everything about you. Otherwise, how could you have survived in the Taiyi mountain range and even subdued that little heavenly fox? Ji Tianxing came to a realization and felt even more respect for the sword Soul Burial of Heaven. All right, Senior Burial of Heaven, you said that Qian Yu is a little heavenly fox? Can you tell me more about it? The sword Soul Burial of Heaven said indifferently, it's just a divine beast, heavenly fox. Although it's one of a kind in this world, when I was in the upper realm. At this point, it suddenly stopped and didn't continue. In short, it's also a great opportunity for you to subdue that little heavenly fox. It will be a great help to you in the future. Since the sword Soul Burial of Heaven didn't want to say more, Ji Tianxing didn't ask any more and nodded to show that he understood. Thank you for your advice, Senior Burial of Heaven. Senior Burial of Heaven, you told me so many secrets today and even helped me think of a way to solve my innate talent defect. You must have your reasons. Ji Tianxing knew very well that there was no such thing as love or hatred for no reason in this world. The sword's soul burial of heaven didn't have any friendship with him, but it was willing to tell him so many secrets and help him come up with ideas. It must have other motives. Sure enough, the sword's soul burial of heaven didn't hide it and said truthfully, yes, part of the reason why I helped you is because you have some relationship with Kenshin. And the main reason is that I need you to grow stronger quickly and help me obtain a stronger primordial chi so that I can gradually awaken. The primordial chi I obtained from the little heavenly fox was too weak. It could only keep my soul from being destroyed, but it couldn't really awaken. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and smiled. Senior burial of heaven, since that's the case, then this is a deal between us. You guide me in cultivating Kenshin's supreme sword Dao, and I help you recover your primordial chi after I become stronger. How about it? The sword's soul burial of heaven suddenly chuckled in a mocking tone. The sword's steel also burst forth with a soaring sword intent, causing a fierce wind to blow in the sky. Ha! A lowly human boy dares to make a deal with me? You're really an interesting little guy. Fine, I'll do as you say. This matter was settled. The ancient sword's steel burst forth with an invisible force and sent Ji Tianxing's consciousness out of Kenshin's tomb. Swoosh! His consciousness returned to his body, and he opened his eyes. Star Ancient Realm, Heavenly Star Pearl, Kenshin's blood. I will never give up on the sword heart Dao. I will definitely find the Heavenly Star Pearl and obtain Kenshin's blood. Ji Tianxing clenched his fists and swore in his heart. After a long time, he finally calmed down and began to cultivate again. In the next 4 days, he cultivated in seclusion in the secret chamber and didn't show himself. It wasn't until the morning of the 5th day that he ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret underground chamber. At this time, his strength had increased a few times compared to before he went into seclusion, and he wasn't far from true energy stage 6. Today was the day he and the little princess Ji Ku set off. Please add me to the bookshelf. Please recommend me and give me tips. Thank you, brothers. Chapter 88. Early in the morning, the Ji residents prepared a carriage for Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku. Other than the 2 coachmen, there were also 4 bodyguards who would escort them to the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Changkong personally led the Ji family to send Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku out of the Ji residence and waved goodbye to them. The 2 carriages left the imperial city under the morning sun and headed north along the official road, kicking up a cloud of dust. Originally, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku were in a separate carriage and their luggage was also in their respective carriages. The Ji family arranged it this way to avoid suspicion, and they also didn't dare to neglect the little princess. They couldn't let the precious little princess squeeze in the same carriage as Ji Tianxing, right? What kind of scandal was this? Where would the imperial family's face be? However, when the carriage left the imperial city, the little princess squeezed into Ji Tianxing's carriage and insisted on squeezing in with him. Her reason was very good. The journey to the Sky Pillar sect was so long and it was too boring to sit alone in a carriage. Of course, she needed someone to chat with to relieve her boredom. Ji Tianxing naturally couldn't bear to refuse her. Seeing her smiling face and her extremely good mood, he chatted with her along the way. In the afternoon, Ji Ku was a little tired and didn't chat anymore. She lay in Ji Tianxing's arms and dozed off. Ji Tianxing naturally wouldn't wake her up. He even changed into a more comfortable position and hugged her as he quietly pondered. When night fell, the 2 carriages drove into a small town. Everyone found an inn to stay in and rest. Early the next morning, everyone rested well and replenished their water and food before continuing on their journey. From the Imperial Azure Kingdom to the Star Ancient Realm where the Sky Pillar sect was located, they had to pass through 2 kingdoms. Fortunately, they were on the main roads of the various kingdoms and the carriage's speed was also very fast. They could travel 500 to 600 miles a day. 3 days later, the carriage drove out of the Imperial Azure Kingdom and entered the Mao Rong Kingdom. There were many mountains and rivers in the Mao Rong Kingdom. The scenery was magnificent and the culture was also very different from the Imperial Azure Kingdom. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku sat in the carriage and enjoyed the scenery along the way. They chatted happily. This was especially true for Ji Ku, who had grown up in the imperial palace and rarely left the imperial city. She had always been curious and yearned for the outside world. Leaving the imperial Azure Kingdom for the Sky Pillar sect was the furthest journey she had ever taken in her life. With the person she loved by her side, she could broaden her horizons and increase her experience. Of course, she was excited and happy. After 3 days of interaction, her relationship with Ji Tianxing had become more and more intimate. Although Ji Tianxing took care of her as an elder brother, she had already regarded Ji Tianxing as her lover, so she did not avoid suspicion in the slightest. Now, Ji Ke had already fallen in love with this kind of life where he didn't have to care about other people's opinions and worldly etiquette when he was outside. She secretly prayed in her heart that it would be great if she could stay like this with big brother Tianxing forever. 9 days later, the carriage left Mao Rong State and entered the territory of Hengchuan State. As long as they crossed Hengchuan State, they would reach the ancient Star Realm. That evening, Ji Tianxing and the others entered a city called Fengyang City. The area of Fengyang City wasn't big, only about half the size of the imperial city. However, the city was bustling with people coming and going. Even at night, it was still noisy. After all, Fengyang City was the only way to enter Hengchuan State. Many merchants from the Imperial Azure Kingdom and Mao Rong State had to pass by here to enter and exit Hengchuan State. After Ji Tianxing and the others entered Fengyang City, they stayed in the best inn in the city and rested there for the night. The inn was very big and there were many guests eating in the main hall on the first floor. There were all kinds of people and there were people from all walks of life. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke led 2 guards into the main hall and sat down at a table to eat. Many of the young and middle-aged men in the surroundings widened their eyes when they saw the appearance of the little princess Ji Ku. They were stunned. After all, Ji Ku was the princess of the imperial family. Not only was she born beautiful and cute, but she also had a noble and graceful temperament. Even though she was only 15 years old, she was already a rare beauty. If she were to grow up a few years, she would definitely be an outstanding beauty. The surrounding men only dared to sneak a few glances at Ji Ku but did not dare to have any improper thoughts. When they saw Ji Ku and Ji Tianxing's manners and the guards beside them, they knew that these two were of noble status and should not be provoked. Ji Ku ignored the crowd's reaction and only had Ji Tianxing in her eyes. Following the principle of not talking while eating, she lowered her head and ate calmly. Only when she met Ji Tianxing's eyes did she reveal a cute smile. However, when the two of them were only halfway through their meal, a middle-aged martial artist dressed in a blue robe and carrying a sword on his back came to the table. This person was dressed as a guard, but his words and actions revealed a bit of arrogance. He ignored Ji Tianxing and cupped his hands to Ji Ku. He said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Miss, my young master would like to invite Miss upstairs for a chat. Would Miss be willing to give him the honor?" After saying that, he raised his head and glanced at the heavenly private room on the second floor. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku immediately frowned. They put down their bowls and chopsticks at the same time and raised their heads to look at the private room. In the exquisitely decorated private room, a handsome young man in a white robe was standing by the window and looking down at Ji Ku. The handsome young man was about 20 years old. He wore a jade crown on his head and his hair was tied up in a bun. His face was fair and handsome, and his whole body exuded a confident and noble aura. When he saw Ji Ku looking up, he even nodded slightly at Ji Ku and revealed a gentle and elegant smile. If it were any other ordinary girl, they would not be able to resist his gentle gaze and smile. Moreover, he was obviously a young man of noble status and strength. Which girl would reject his kind invitation? Unfortunately, Ji Ku was not an ordinary girl. That handsome young man was destined to be disappointed. She retracted her gaze and glanced at the middle-aged guard. Her tone was indifferent as she said, "Please tell your young master that I'm not interested and don't know him. I don't want to give him the honor." The middle-aged guard's expression changed instantly. His eyes were sharp as he shouted in a low voice, "Miss, do you know who my young master is? How dare you be so merciless?" Ji glanced at him disdainfully and sneered disdainfully, "Why should I care who your young master is? What does it have to do with me? Also, do you know who I am? How dare you be so rude to me?" At this moment, Ji Tianxing ordered the guard beside him expressionlessly, "Long Wu, if this person dares to speak another word, throw him out." The guard named Long Wu was actually one of the Shadow Sword Hall's experts. He was a cold-blooded swordsman at the second stage of the mystic comprehending realm. Hearing Ji Tianxing's order, Long Wu stared coldly at the middle-aged guard. His entire body was emitting a chilling, murderous aura. The middle-aged guard was so angry that his face turned ashen. However, he did not dare to fight with Long Wu in public to avoid being punished by his master. He raised his head and glanced at the handsome young man on the second floor before resentfully turning around and leaving. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.